Nothing else to say except wagons ho! On Bad Movies Rule, the worst movie podcast ever recorded. And today we're heading east with John Candy and Richard Lewis. It's Wagons East on BMR. Let's go. I was trying to think what would be the equivalent today, right? It's like, where's everybody going? And we'd be going the opposite direction. Where's everybody going today?
Well, that's a great question.
Yeah,
I mean,
space.
AI, it's like, hey, I'm going to actually hire a real artist. It's like, what? Wait,
what are you doing?
Why would you, AI is free, don't you? I mean, that would be.
Believe me.
And actually, that's one of the things about this film. It's all about people who found out they didn't fit in the place that they were in and decided to go somewhere else, which I can certainly identify with.
That's going to be like 200 years in the future. We'll all have like robo eyes and stuff, and someone's just going to go all natural, and they're going to be like, what's the matter with this guy?
Yeah,
people turning off podcasts and turning on AM radio again.
Hey, there you go. Don't do that.
Just the biggest cell phone you can get with the biggest antenna.
That's right. Instead of tiny, the ones
Zach
that'll
Morris.
be in our brains, right? Instead of the chip in your brain, you'll have a rotary telephone.
Yep.
That's what's going to happen. That's the equivalent of this movie here.
So I have actually a really quick little aside.
Yeah.
So I heard this sound outside my house, and it was this just repeating.
Okay.
And finally, I found where it was, and it was basically there was a security light that somebody had put up on their garage that was trying to connect to Bluetooth, and it was saying, "Waiting to connect, waiting to connect." And it was saying this over and over for like a week. Every time I would come by, I would hear, "Waiting to connect." And I thought it would be awesome to have like an art installation.
Just some guy on Match.com. It's just not working out.
Well, with a mom and a dad and a kid sitting at a kitchen table, and each of them are looking at their phones, and the phones are saying, "Waiting to connect."
Wow, nice.
Yeah.
What if it's a dude that's actually just speaking through the Ring doorbell every time you're around now?
Yeah.
He waits for you to come outside.
to come outside.
Connect. Waiting.
With just some cookies.
Yes. He's socially awkward, and he's trying to tell you he wants you to come over.
He's just trying to drive you mad.
Thank you guys all for
Social
being here.
experiment.
We've got the coach, Pat Riley, in the house.
Hey.
And the voice, Nicole Freer.
Hello.
The voice.
And at popular request, we get guys all the time, Rob, in the Discord, in our chat, that are just like, when's Rob King coming back? When's Rob King coming back?
Wow.
So since Break-In was your last time here, right?
Yep, Break-In.
Rob King is back in the house.
I've been working on my moves.
Let's see, you've had Last Starfighter, we've had Break-In, you've had Three Amigos. I couldn't remember what any of the other ones were. Prayer of the Roller Boys.
Oh, yes.
You can't forget that one.
Yeah.
Nobody can.
Cinema masterpiece.
That's great. Well, I'm happy that you're all here. If you've never listened to the show before, we're going to go through this movie scene by scene. At the end, we'll give out some awards, decide who did the best, who did the worst, and then whether we think it's actually a bad movie. But if you love this movie, keep on loving it. We're gonna walk through this whole thing for you, and we're gonna get started right here with the vitals. This movie was directed, again, this is 1994's Wagons East, was directed by Peter Markle. When you look at Peter Markle's filmography, a very accomplished director. He directed Bat 21, was a Gene Hackman movie back in the day. He directed Flight 93, the 9/11 movie that I thought was a good movie. But when you look at his filmography, you see not a single comedy on the list except one, Wagons East.
Yes. And
I mean, it's still not a comedy on the list.
So, we got a lot of air quotes, but go ahead.
Yes. My thing is, maybe Peter, as accomplished as he is and talented as he is, not the right guy for this job. So it makes me wonder, how did Peter Markle get this job, or why? Or was it just a matter of, hey, Peter's free, he's not doing anything.
Yeah.
He's got 6 weeks until he starts.
Maybe he was just looking for a girl and then found her as he did, and then he was like, "That's all I wanted that for. I'll go to other kinds of movies."
I felt, in reference to our AI comments previously, it felt like this was written by AI. I know this was way too early, but it was sort of like all the jokes were in the vicinity of a joke.
Yes.
It's like, this is the sort of thing that people find to be funny. Let's do that. And then you're like, that's not actually very funny.
Right.
And so it's like, how is it that you are so comedically tone deaf that you don't understand that that's, the joke about the guy with his calf. And you're thinking, okay, well, that's just kind of gross and not very funny. And then, hey, let's come back to that 3 times.
That's the magic number, right? It's threes.
The only
funniest
running
number.
joke.
And that makes it great because you did it 3 times, even though it was horrible the first time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's like they had the targets. You could, and it was telegraphed. Some of these jokes, like, okay, I know what's going to happen here, and the arrow would come in and just at the last second dive
Right.
and miss the target.
And you had great talent. I mean, a lot of these actors are fantastic.
Yes.
And they're actually really good in this show, and yet the show doesn't work.
It doesn't. So Peter, not to hang it all on his feet, but he was misplaced as director here.
Mayhaps.
The writers doesn't inspire. I mean, they don't inspire a ton more comment. It's Matthew Carlson, lots of TV credits. Probably the biggest one he came off before this was the Wonder Years before coming into here.
What would you do if I sang out of tune? Sorry.
Wow.
We would pause the podcast and listen. That's what we would do.
And
okay, sorry.
Jerry Abramson. You gotta swallow about 16 more rocks,
Right.
And then you can do it. Joe Cocker.
Or else just smoke a couple on filters.
Sure.
There you
Get
go.
it
Sure,
going.
purple.
The other writer was Jerry Abramson. This was his only credit of any kind.
Okay.
So, my guess here is Jerry figured somebody to buy the script, and they brought in a writer that had writing credits, aka the television guy, because this was a guy off the street essentially that got a script made.
Yeah.
So he had the genius idea of what if they went east, and they're like, we love it, hire a writer, and that's pretty much where we're at.
Yeah, I think that in one sense, when I first watched this, I thought that is a genius idea, having them go east rather than west, because everybody expects them to go west. But the problem is that as far as comedy is concerned, what's funny is the fish out of water.
Right.
So you put somebody in a situation that they don't fit in with and then watch them flounder. If you put them in that situation for the first 5 minutes and then tell them, okay, you can go back to the water, it's suddenly less interesting because it's like they're actually approaching a place where they'll belong as opposed to constantly not belonging.
Or a whole new movie could be they actually didn't belong there either.
Well, yes, that's probably true.
Wagons Easter coming up.
They come back and find that the east has also changed.
Right.
Right, or whatever. You either give me the movie where it's them trying to make it in the West for the first time, and that's funny, or old craggly old Western dudes trying to make it in the civilized East.
Yep.
Right? Either of those are more interesting premises.
Right.
But
I mean, the other one too is the person who doesn't belong and then proves that he belongs, a la Blazing Saddles.
yeah,
Right.
we do that too.
I know. That's the thing. When you put it in that context, they've had Blazing Saddles for 25 years and they still hadn't figured out how to do, or 25, 15.
At this point, 15, but still.
15 years.
Yeah.
And they still hadn't figured out how to do it.
No?
I mean, like the Odyssey was like a real popular book, so it could have been good.
Yeah.
Right.
Somebody should have looked at that and just made a Western version of
That's
the
right.
Odyssey.
Homer Simpson's Odyssey.
There's a way to make something funny and a way not to make something funny, and they chose the latter.
Right. Which is a bold move for making a comedy.
Yeah.
I
Right.
feel like
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
kudos to them.
I mean, the non-funny comedy is something that hasn't been tried very often.
Kudos.
Not intentionally, at
No,
least.
not intentionally. The movie star, and speaking of why this makes even less sense, movie star John Candy,
Yeah. Terrific.
Richard Lewis,
Yes.
John C. McGinley,
Yep.
Robert Picardo,
Yep.
Thomas F. Duffy,
Yep.
Ellen Greene.
I don't want your life.
All these-
I don't want your movie.
although Ellen Greene took me the longest to figure out who she was.
But as soon as,
Oh, yeah.
there was one moment where it's like,
Audrey!
wait a minute, she's Audrey. Yes.
I know.
This movie had so many character actors from movies that I loved. You
Yeah.
have
Right.
at least 2 from Dances with Wolves.
Yep.
At least 2 from Office Space. You've got just the list goes on and on of. I know this person from Home Improvement. I know
there's
Don Lake, the second in command to the general in the cavalry. Don Lake is a very funny
There's
comedian. actor.
Daryl from the Newhart show.
Yes.
There's all these people.
you have a guy from
Yes.
Deadwood.
Yeah.
That's right.
You know?
William Sanderson from
Yes.
Newhart. Yeah. So we saw William Sanderson last time on Black Moon Rising. He was the deaf guy that got nailed by the truck. Do you remember that, Nicole? And I was like, where do I know this guy from? And then I just remembered him going like waving in the air and like, oh, that's my guy.
Bye.
See, to me, this is sort of one of the reasons why I really wanted to like this film.
Yeah.
And the fact that I had trouble liking it was problematic on a number of levels. But one of them is that I am myself a performer, and I have been in shows that I thought, okay, we've got a good cast. This should be good. And they were terrible.
I'll bet they had a great time between shots.
Oh, I'm sure they did.
And that probably boosted their feelings of this is going to play. Even if
Everybody
it doesn't play now, it'll play later.
Right. And everybody was in it. Nobody was like pulling back. Nobody seemed like they weren't trying.
I don't know. The trivia though says that everybody hated the facilities. The location and everything made it miserable. Off screen too, and that a lot of the people were like frustrated by the material.
Well, I'll tell you this.
I would see that.
John Candy was in a financial sling because of his deal with the Argonauts in the Canadian Football League.
Yep.
And he was a part owner of that team and was in a sling for like $1 million or something like that.
And then the guy sold them, even though he had agreed to do more shot, to help boost advertising and all that. And then he was also contractually obligated to do this film.
Right.
So even though
he
had
quit smoking right before the filming of it. And so he was piling weight on too, as he was dealing with the aftermath of quitting smoking.
John Candy's always been a big guy. He looked huge.
He looked very bloated, and he did not look well.
No, and so
but he also still had that John Candy.
He did.
There was the moment where the drunk guy, John Candy, they were talking to him in the bar, and when he turns toward the camera with his eyes, and you're like, okay, John, I believe in you. I will follow you.
Honestly, it was probably some of the most grounded scene work in the whole film was from him, which I didn't expect. I was thinking it at the time when I was watching it, because I wasn't aware of his financial issues. I was thinking, some people who were in slapstick comedy sort of have made their way through into more dramatic stuff. And I was like, this could have been, if it had worked out differently, his way. Not that he is anything like Robin Williams, but it could have sort of been that kind of way.
No, I wish John would have had more of those opportunities.
Because I thought it was actually impressive.
I thought he did a really good job as a dramatic actor in this movie.
Right.
I thought so too.
Yeah.
And actually, he's always had that. He's always had that gear. He can switch out of doing something really ridiculous, in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles with Steve Martin. There's this point near the end where he gives this speech where he says, I lost my wife, and I have sometimes I just latch onto people during the holidays, and I guess this time I didn't let go, and it's such a human, wonderful moment. It's just powerful, and he's always had that, and he did show that a little bit in this show. So he still had it, but
I remember Steve Martin talking about that scene, saying he had the whole crew in tears and him too.
Right.
And
They ended up cutting most of it.
Yeah, they had to cut it down from like 3 hours to 2 hours, and so much of that speech was lost. But people were still affected by it.
So I guess we can just talk about the thing everybody knows at this point. There was John Candy's last film being made here. Canadian Bacon came out after this, but was shot before it. John actually died on set in his trailer in this.
So Richard Lewis and who was the other
Robert
guy?
Picardo
Showed up that morning to say, because he was supposed to leave that day. They were showing up to give him a farewell. And nobody answered. And they opened the door and they found out what happened. I mean, can you imagine?
No.
They discovered him, yeah. They both were crying their eyes out, and then he had only had a few more things to shoot. They filled in with body doubles, and the second bar scene specifically, which we'll get to when we talk through it, he hadn't shot yet, which they reused footage from his first bar scene, along with just changing the way the information was delivered. But he had, say 90% of the movie in the can. But sad because he was only 43 years old. He's a year younger than I am now.
Yeah.
At the time. And I know it's crazy.
I think you're okay.
I think I'm okay.
I think you're okay.
John had a lot of stress and other things, and a history of smoking, and
just so brilliant.
I love him.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that you realize. Okay, death is not a fair thing because it shouldn't have happened this way. You shouldn't have been in a movie that you were doing because you had to get yourself out of a hole when you had such a brilliant career. Yeah. It should have been like a big giant. The best movie you've ever been in, not something that you're like, okay, I guess I'm done now. I can go on,
Right. He probably felt like he was slumming it, and it's sad. And I wish he'd had gone on to do more things, but I think it's a testament to his talent that even in a movie like this, whenever he's on screen, I'm still like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, he still shows up. He's not slumming it. You know, he is still in it, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Was not able to find any budgetary information for this movie, but it only grossed $4.5 million at the box office, which I got to imagine it costs a lot more than that to make, considering John probably made that much to do the movie. Movie currently sits at a 4.8 on IMDb. So out of the 150 plus that we've done, that's good enough for 121st. So it's towards the bottom of our rankings as far as all the movies we've covered. It's the other movies we've done that were a 4.8 were Dead or Alive and Knock Off. Currently, this is the rare thing here with 30 plus reviews. It's a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. Not one critic gave it a good review.
But stay tuned to the end. Who knows? We might all give it 4. Give it a good
based on the
movie.
conversation we've been having,
No,
I think
you don't
that's
know.
going to happen.
You don't know that.
A third of the audience, so 33% audience score. And there's 4 of us here. So the math says one of us could end up liking this movie. 33% of the audience gave it a thumbs up. So yeah, it's one of those ones. I don't know if any of you have seen the movie prior to this. I remember catching it back in the day when it was on Comedy Central, like 2:00 in the morning or whatever. So I had watched it, way back then. And had any of you ever seen Wagons East before this?
No, never heard of it.
Okay. Well, I'm interested to see what you guys thought, and I'm interested to hear what the people at home think. And so thank you guys for joining us. Please check out our show notes. It shows all the ways you can contact and get in touch with the show. We have other shows I want to make you aware of. If we've got a show where we talk about good movies, we talk about horror films, we talk about cartoons. That's all on our Patreon, patreon.com/badmoviesrule. If you want to hear our other shows, again, that's in the show notes. Other than that, guys, it's time to pay the bills. You guys ready to jump in here to the plot of Wagons East, what little there is?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the movie starts in New Mexico in a town called Prosperity. And
I think that's fake.
the immediate juxtaposition of expectations versus reality, I thought was a clever way of doing it. Here's the Land Rush poster, and with this beautiful face on it, right? Come be part of the expanding West. And then the wind blows it up, and there's a real-looking guy from the West.
Right.
And the
Paradise
actual
awaits you.
Yes.
of
what it said.
Prosperity, right? Which does not look like a paradise.
No.
Behind it looks like a dust bowl.
Pair of tumbleweeds.
Right? And you're like, okay, this is the West isn't the bill of goods that these people had been sold. At least some of the people that were.
I thought that the opening was very promising.
Yeah.
I thought it's very clever. And actually even beyond this point.
Yeah.
I thought that, and also I was really impressed with all of the, Carol Coe and the Lion's Gate and all of the Pegasus and everything. It was like, this is going to be great.
I've seen a lot of
It's
good
going to be
movies.
so great.
Yeah.
And then you're like, wow, what happened?
Maybe the second half.
I believe this was the last time TriStar distributed a Carol Coe film.
Yeah, I think that's right. And that started with like Charlie Chaplin. TriStar was, and then you've got this. It's like, what happened?
And so the first 5-10 minutes of this is just showing each of these characters coming into various run-ins with life in the West and how it's been made, terrible. So we first meet Ben, played by Robert Picardo, and Ben works at the bank. And the bank is getting robbed by some desperados, as they're wont to do in the Old West. And they kind of make a joke out of it going, it's the third time this week, right?
Right.
And
you might want to let people build up their bank account before you rob them.
Yeah.
Right. And he just takes his banker's hat up, puts it on the other guy. And he's like, I already got a job, I think is what the dude says.
Yeah.
Why are you robbing the bank?
Well, and there's even the town is got 97 people in it. And then
that's right.
robbery, there's
93.
93.
Yeah.
So
Or 63.
Again, I thought, well, that's funny. That's funny.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're off to a good start here.
He's the first one at the bar complaining about, life in the West.
And he
Well, I
wants
think
some
we-
sort of frou-frou drink, and he
Yes.
gets whiskey instead.
And we both worked at branches that got robbed at some point.
We
So there
did.
was also that part of me too that was sitting there thinking like, yep, you know what? Been there, done that.
Well, not like
on
that.
on the other, nobody died.
So, I want to make sure that we're clear on that one.
But there were also times when we weren't being robbed where there were times where I was just like, you know what? Why don't you just sit over here? I'm done with this. I don't want to do this anymore either. I wish somebody would rob us and make this job exciting.
And then we meet Ellen Greene, who is Audrey, as we said, from Little Shop of Horrors. But I didn't recognize her because she had red hair and she wasn't doing her voice.
Right.
No.
Which I thought was her voice.
The Audrey voice.
I thought-
the voice with a little bit of a lisp.
That's
in it.
right.
This lifted voice of Audrey.
I felt so stupid when I watched it. I went, oh, she's got a regular voice. I'm a moron.
Like from Will and Grace.
Yes.
Karen, same thing.
Same exact thing.
Karen Malala.
But it showed up again a little bit later. I mean, there was like you know, 25 minutes later, I heard the voice and it's like, wait a minute, I know who that is.
Exactly. So she comes down, her big B, she's a prostitute at this bar and she's
Sex worker.
There he is.
Sorry. Yeah. And what happens is the guy's like trying to pay her with an IOU, which she plants him on a table, like off the top rope, WWE style, through a table. And then she goes and sits at the bar and she wants a whiskey. And then we meet Julian. So Julian is played by John C. McGinley.
He's terrific
in everything he does.
He's and especially in this show, he's like a standout. It's like every scene that he's in, you're like, wow, he's got that character, and he's
he's the hero of the film.
He's the hero of the film, and I feel like he's like doing it for real. Now I know that, and we just talk about this now, that what passed for comedy in 1994 and played at a very specific stereotype, right, is obviously not something we would see here in 2024. But I thought John took what they gave him to do and tried to do the best that he could with it.
He managed to walk that line, I think, actually with some respect for that group, which others would not.
I agree. So kudos to John. John is, I thought it was a library, but then I realized, no, this is a bookstore, right? Because you don't charge.
He's a bookseller.
At the library. So didn't think that town this tiny would have a bookstore and like an elegant bookstore.
With a cappuccino machine.
With a cappuccino machine. But like, hey, what are these guys complaining about? And he comes in and this is one of the Ferguson boys, which we'll meet here, the rest of them in a moment, needs a quote, big damn book.
Right.
Right? Mm-hmm. And he sells him Pride and Prejudice, I think. How much for just the pride?
Right.
He's got a mild case of dysentery. He doesn't need both volumes.
He doesn't. He's like, let me test it out. And he just yelps when he tears the first page out of it.
Another scene early on that I was like, okay, this could be something.
Right. But I would think that you know, the women that I know who read Pride and Prejudice in high school had a different reaction to the men. I mean, I think for most of the men, it's like, I understand. It's toilet paper.
Right.
I get it. And the women are like, what are you talking about? It's not toilet paper. That's one of the greatest
novels of all time.
Right.
Let's jump over to the Ferguson place. So we have this nice gal named Lindsay being dropped off of a carriage by Billy, who I thought was going to ride right out of this movie, but actually ended up coming back around inexplicably.
Right? So thank you.
Here's the part of it. And this movie hadn't come out yet when this movie came out.
Yeah.
But so Billy was in Scary Movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the big punchline with him at one point was that photo that got taken where he basically had a baby penis.
Yeah, right.
Oh, no.
Every time I see him, that is the correlation. And it's like, you got to be careful sometimes with what you're doing in Hollywood.
I'm sure he'd be so happy to hear you say that.
All that sticks. Every time I see his face, I think of that scene in Scary Movie instantly.
He would be so thrilled.
Right? I'm sorry, dude. Well, it's just that's what happened.
A scene with him and John C. McGinley in the
yes.
the water where he looks down and notices.
We'll talk about that. Yeah.
So that's haunting the guy.
Okay, apparently.
So I did giggle at this part of the movie because I just immediately thought of that.
I love it. She gets off and
sure about this? Quite sure.
Quite sure. Oh, you sound like Audrey there for a second.
Right.
She walks into the Ferguson place and there is a backyard wrestling match happening indoors. Again, putting people through tables and chairs and bunk beds.
You got to remake every one of those tables. I feel like they'd be a little bit more precious with them.
That's what they spend all their time doing.
Just remaking.
Putting their tables back together. Right? I mean, what else is there to do? I would be bored out of my mind in the Old West. That's all I think about whenever I watch these movies, is how bored I would be.
I would just be locking myself in a room all day long. No place for me.
Nope, no thanks.
There's a reason why bars and brothels and casinos were so big out in the Old West. You had to entertain.
Yeah.
Blazing Saddles came out in, I think, 74, and it was during the time
the greatest movie ever made.
When people were still watching Westerns. And so to send up the Western with the bar fight, with the people crashing off of the top balcony onto the table with, you know, all the gun, that's great when people are still watching it. But this was,
Yeah.
Wasn't there kind of a
1994.
revitalization of that though in the early '90s? I mean, isn't that when like Tombstone and
Same year, yeah.
I mean, you had
might
Dances
have
with
been.
Wolves. You had a
But-
there was like this rebirth of it with like Sam Elliott and Kurt
Unforgiven.
Russell.
But when I think about and Unforgiven was fantastic. But when I think about this as a parody of westerns, as
Right.
opposed to Galaxy Quest as a parody of science fiction, and that was 1999.
Right.
There's no comparison because the thing about Galaxy Quest is it's a great science fiction story
Yeah.
as well as being
On
a
its
great
own.
It's so good.
parody of a science fiction story. This is not a great western, nor a great parody of a western.
It's neither.
So you're in this weird place of you're making fun of things that people aren't really concerned with anymore, and you're making fun of them in a way that's not particularly funny. So,
And we find out that Lindsay is a mail order bride from England, I think. Her accent was a little, I thought Mrs. Doubtfire, your accent's a little muddled.
it's like that mid-Atlantic
I'll bet it was Mid-Atlantic.
nondescript.
that's right.
Okay. So cool. They shipped her out here to be the wife of 5 guys. They all raised their hands when she says, who's the groom?
That was already so uncomfortable.
They all
Yep.
kicked in together. And it's
Right.
like, well, actually, the thing was signed by Clayton. Oh, he's out back. She's like, oh, thank God. Runs out back. And this is where we get joke number 1 of Clayton and his cow.
The bestiality joke, number 1.
Hilarious.
We're going to come back to it because it's good. That's a good one. People love that.
Bestiality joke number 0 should be the starting and stopping point.
Right.
I mean, in my personal
I
taste.
know.
Yep.
It's like,
Right?
First of all, you already have a woman that has been sold into a kind of sexual
By her family.
situation by her family. That's already appalling.
Right.
And then the guy that the one guy that seems to apparently be in charge has this bestiality thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I'm just disgusted by this whole situation. Let's bring it back because it's a.
She could just go. She could have just been, they don't know who
Yeah.
I am.
Right.
Bye.
Right.
Why? She could have just asked for Clayton's name, not say who she is.
It's
Exactly.
not they're going to Facebook stalk you to find you again.
Oh, right, exactly. Billy, come back.
Just
please.
sending out telegrams all over the country.
You know,
Talk
if
about
she
it.
had just at that point sort of soldiered up and decided, I'm going to go in there, and then she said, I'm from the FBI.
Yeah.
You people are under arrest. All of you for bestiality, for this.
Perfect.
For this, right.
Yep.
Perfect.
And then just get them all in chains and send them off someplace. And
Perfect.
then she can have her life.
So she has the greatest sense of honor I've ever seen from a character in a film in a long time because she's like, nope, I signed a contract.
My family got the money.
And this is what's going to happen. So but thankfully, we don't see anything with him and his cow. He's just running away from the barn. The cow doesn't even want to be part of this joke. And Clayton comes running out going, darling. And that's how you know. They're always
Right.
fighting. Then we see she goes to the bar and orders a whiskey. And then it cuts to Richard Lewis, who is named Phil in this movie. And Phil is looking for his cows. And he finds him. And the way he knows they're his cows is because it says right on
They're
them,
branded.
Phil's cows.
Phil's cows. Yeah. It's at Circle K Ranch. It's Phil's cows.
Phil's cows, which means they had to make that iron up in order to brand these things. Okay, seems like a lot to do, but regardless, he says, "Hey, those are my cows." You know, in the Richard Lewis way that he does things.
Right.
You know, trying to be nice. And the guy's like, "I don't like being called the cattle rustler," and so we're gonna have a gunfight. He's like, "Oh, I'm a sheep farmer. What are cows?
Oh, what am I talking about? Right.
Ridiculous." He's
Yeah.
anti-handgun too. I did think that was funny. I like Richard Lewis. He didn't have a lot to work with.
I like him as well. I
Yeah.
always felt like he was sort of a Woody Allen light.
Yes.
You know, he's got a lot of the same sort of Jewish neuroticism going on, and the kind of apologetic, but you know, he's sort of always sort of ducking and dodging, but a funny guy and a guy who's clearly aware of what's happening.
So did they sell it to him, just walk in there and be yourself 100%?
Right.
Because that's what it seems
There have
like.
been there have been other shows where he has been himself 200%, and that's too much.
Right.
For
But
me,
this one was about 100%, which was about
I
right.
was biased, so when I saw him, I winced because 15 years ago I saw him live, and it was the least comfortable show I've ever seen because he could not maintain a string of consciousness. He just no punchline was related to what he was saying. I think there was a lot of drugs involved, and so we were just all there like, "Is it over?" I'm watching you fall. Like, not really fall, but just, it was super uncomfortable.
See, that's actually something, an experience that I had with this film in general, which was that I thought, there's so many good people here, and they're trying so hard, and I want them to succeed, and they're not succeeding. And every time that happens, as an audience member, it's like a white knuckle moment. It's like, can they pull this joke off? Can they get this sequence right?
Come on, guys.
And then it's like, no, they didn't. They didn't. Oh, God, that's excruciating. You know, as an audience member, you want them to succeed because your salvation is based on whether they make it or not.
Just for me, land one. Just land one joke. Please. Please. No, he drops the gun and runs off as the guy's doing his 10 paces, and that's it. Another joke to just like an air coming out of a balloon.
Also, I don't know if I blame wardrobe or him or direction, but his particular outfit, the way his hair was, the way it was, my fancy 7-cent word is anachronistic. Like things like don't belong right in the time that they are. And so I was like, okay, it seemed like he just stepped off the set of When Harry Met Sally somehow. And they just like popped him in there. But maybe they're like, oh, he's the Jewish guy from the New York Bronx. But not at that time. I mean,
but apparently he's from St. Louis.
Right, exactly. But I don't know. It's just, I couldn't figure out why it's like such a sore thumb. But maybe that's also, they wanted someone who was different and didn't belong. But it just, because I couldn't figure out where the line was, it bothered me that it was in this liminal middle stage.
Yeah, so they all end up at the bar commiserating together, and this is where Zeke shows up. And Zeke, as we said, played by William Sanderson, famously of the Newhart show. And Zeke is, well, before you get to Zeke, they all have this idea like, the West isn't what they told us it was. It's too hard. What if we actually went back? Right? We could just go back. We could go back to St. Louis or go back east. And everyone seems to be thinking like, yeah, this is a good idea. And then Zeke goes, well, we can't without a sign from the Lord.
Right.
This is the moment here.
Yep.
And then it starts raining. And he's like, well, Richard Lewis, I was kind of funny, like, oh, yeah, as signs go, that's a sign. That's a sign.
How often does it rain here? Look.
Oh, it can't. Well, it's just the rain. And then the lightning hits and the wind picks up and blows the door in. And, well, it's just the wind, Zeke says. Right. And so it's almost like God himself was just like, all right. Strikes lightning into there's a weather vane on top that's a rooster. It comes through the ceiling, impales the bartender as he's chastising all of them for being babies and whiners and quitters. Right. Impales him to the bar and then points east.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like he wouldn't have died immediately from that, by the way.
No, he could have.
That should have been real gross.
Somebody get this weather vane out of me.
Yeah, ow, death.
Having him flap around with a weather vane on his back, the blood.
Something.
Not saying I wanted that, but it just seemed too final.
Instant death.
And actually part of that whole equation was also the code. It's against the code.
That's right. I forgot.
And then they started to mention basically every trope of Western movies. Man's got to stand tall. He's always got to have his gun with him. He's got to do this. He's got to go west. And that should have been a warning sign for us, because right then it's like, okay, these are all the jokes that are going to come up.
Yep.
And the rest of this is people making fun of these aspects of the code.
The good news in Prosperity, all 63 of them, someone was the town painter of signs, which was really nice. They had lots of fabric, lots of red paint.
Yes, all of it.
So long, Prosperity. They could spell it, which was awesome.
Somebody loved making signs in that town.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it was probably John C. McGinley.
Probably.
Think about it. He was probably the most literate man in that town.
No, he definitely probably was.
And we were at a time still where, they didn't really care about the literacy of women.
Right.
Not a lot of people know how to read.
Yeah.
So at this point, thank the Lord, John Candy walks into the movie as the final sign from God that it's time to go east, because what are we going to do without a wagon master? And you said you only play the French horn. And John has a thing that says wagon master on him, and he's drunk as a skunk, falls down. They're just like, this is another, like, come on, the wagon master just walked in here. And this scene, I thought, like you were saying earlier, John played really well. Really, really well. And once they've got him up and awake again, he uses this like stack of like muffin tins and like, what else was there?
There was like kettles.
Cast iron pots.
Dutch oven.
All that stuff.
Which, if you know what that means.
Hilarious.
That's a hilarious thing.
And he's utilizing these kitchen apparatus to explain how he's going to help them get back east and how he knows the way. And it sets up the dynamic between the three main guys in the group being Ben, Phil, and Harlow. Harlow's John Candy's character. In that Ben is totally against Harlow in every decision he makes, and Phil is pretty much in support of Harlow in every decision he makes throughout the whole thing. Because he's like, oh, come on, look, he's doing a great job with the muffin tins. And Ben's like, this is ridiculous. We're all going to die.
Oh, do you know the muffin tin? 90 songs later, sorry.
He pours out his whiskey and says, I'm going to go sober and I'm going to be the man. Please give me this job and we're going to go. And he's like, all right, fine. And so the premise, the plot of the movie is now kicked into motion. We leave at dawn or noonish.
Right.
Again, like that. That was
Decent
good.
job. Yes.
And all of that was actually not that disappointing. It was fairly promising. You thought, okay, I've got the premise. I've got the idea. They're heading east instead of west. We've got some good characters. We have this interaction in the bar. Maybe this will be okay.
Right. And the wagon trail starts off funny enough where he starts going west without them. And
Right. Though I don't know why they were all pointed west.
right.
And then he rides off in front of them. You're like, hey, what the hell? We're going east. It's like, yeah, you're pointed west, so it's kind of on you guys.
I don't think they knew which way was east, to be honest with you. I think, but they knew he was going west. I guess that doesn't even hold water, that explanation.
Well, and the entire pots and pans map no longer applies either.
That's
Right.
And none of them recognize the fact that, like, none of this sounds familiar. We would have
Right.
passed some of this stuff on the way out here, right?
He
I don't
was
see
talking
a
about
kettle anywhere.
Yeah.
Pawnee Nation, which is apparently in the west rather
Right.
than the east. And right.
Yeah, he makes a lot of mistakes on the way. But he goes, all right, he says the thing. He delivers the name of the movie. I love when they do that in movies.
Yeah, right.
Wagons East.
Really? You like that?
Oh, I love it. It's hilarious because it's usually like shoehorned in a way that, I mean, in this case, it made sense for them
I
to
know.
say it.
So what if what if Kenobi had said to Luke on Tatooine?
Yes.
Doesn't matter. Movie sucks anyway.
In the
If only you had opinions.
in the barroom scene,
Yeah.
he said, "Luke, it looks like this is going to be Star Wars."
That's what exactly. I would have
been amazing.
It's just been the stupidest.
I know.
moment.
And it's
You love
amazing.
it, though.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Okay.
It doesn't happen all the time. I'd say maybe 30-40% of the movies we do.
30,
maybe more on this
6.2.
show because we're dealing with kind of
Right.
trash. But whenever they do it, I think it's great.
It is a layup.
Life is short. Enjoy what you can.
I just want Tom Cruise to, be hanging off of a cliff one time and just turn the camera and go, this mission just got a whole lot more impossible.
Mission : impossible.
Right?
Yeah.
Come on, man. Be awesome. All right. We do set up the antagonist here, which is played by Gaylord St. Sartain, who's been on this show multiple times, but he's uncredited in this movie. I think he wanted his name off of this thing. He's great
He is really great.
in everything that I've seen him in.
Yeah.
Not so much in this. I thought, again, not a lot to do. But plays J.P. Moreland, which is probably supposed to be J.P. Morgan.
Yeah.
But we got to get more land.
Yeah.
Wah, 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 wah. That deserves that.
That'd be a Caruso. If he could do the Caruso thing from,
Yeah.
But use the little
Looks like we
glasses
need
that were worn by
more land.
John Slade.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying, man.
Yeah.
All right, but there's a big boardroom, and they're all talking about how much money they're going to make, and how the land push west is going to let them finish the railroad, and so we got to hype it up so people go out there, and they get this passes for apparently breaking news that it reaches the boardroom. Oh my gosh, there's 6 wagons going east.
Right.
Okay, great. Everyone laughs it off like who cares, but not J.P. Moreland. J.P. Moreland. They have to be stopped immediately. We're going to call in my guy, Mr. Slade.
Yeah.
We'll send him a telegram and we'll get them
That
stopped.
scene felt really community theater.
Didn't it?
Yeah.
The whole thing. That's what I'm saying. Even from Mr. Sartain, who's always really
Right.
good.
Yeah. Not now, you nincompoop.
Right. I was so bummed out. And maybe he obviously must have realized the same as he's like, get my name off of this movie.
Well, now this is getting a little bit ahead. Is it okay for us to talk?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Slade yet?
Well, we're going to talk about Slade right here. Yeah.
Okay. I think there's a problem with the way that Slade is portrayed because he is too hardcore in the first 2 scenes. He murders 2 people in the first 2 scenes.
Yeah.
just in a cavalier fashion.
Yeah.
Keystone Cop the rest of the movie.
And then the rest of it, he's Wile E. Coyote.
I was going to say, it's a Looney Tune.
It's like, okay, decide which he is. Is he really a threat or is he Wile E. Coyote?
Oh, they just undermined him so hard.
If they could have started him as Wiley, if he had gotten the first assignment and completely
Pick one or the other.
and bungled it.
No.
And see, the great thing about a character like that is that all you have to do is take a kind of semi-reasonable plan and then make it worse and worse and worse until it fails catastrophically.
Right.
And then have the next semi-reasonable plan that gets worse and worse. So
Sounds like the screenwriting process for this movie.
There it is.
So that's the thing. It's not hard to make it funny. I mean, that's why Wile E. Coyote is so funny. He's like, well, he's got this lever and he's got this other thing. And then, it turns out, look, now he's being launched.
Yeah.
Instead, but you never had any of that kind of thing. And it's like, is this guy the Terminator or is he, what is he?
I'll tell you what he does have. The worst glasses I've ever seen.
I had
in a
those
movie.
glasses.
Did you really?
But in the aughts, I couldn't get the big ones.
Were they
That's
dark?
for you, Bob.
Was it sunglasses? Or were they?
No, they were just regular. It was the little rectangular glasses.
Sure.
That
But they were
everybody
mirrored.
had.
What they remind you of?
Reminded me of Cool Hand Luke,
Oh, yeah, I suppose.
the boss with no eyes.
right.
Yeah.
Much better movie than
Oh my God, I love that movie so much.
It was quite a bit better.
Nobody ate 50 eggs.
as they're leaving, as the wagon train is leaving, I did like the line, the Phil's son. This is where we first meet his family, his wife, Constance, and then the daughter and the son, and he's got a bag over his head, and he's, my dad's a quitter. And I did like this line from him. He goes, the country is founded by quitters, right?
Yep.
If it wasn't for quitters, nobody would ever start anything.
Right?
Okay.
All right.
All right, way to frame it properly.
That's actually, part of the reason I wore the Beavis and Butthead today was
Yes.
that this is a very American movie.
It is.
And it's about the American experiment.
Do we have to claim this?
And it is in part about, there is a sifting process. The people who go west are a certain kind of people because they are like, let's go. The 49ers are all like, I'm selling everything. I'm going to go out. I'm going to get rich off gold. I'm going to do all this stuff. And the people who are out east who are like, I'm not doing it. It's because they're not.
Oh,
Well,
that's
there's
right.
two. Even in the theory of when people move to new places, or people who even left, some of our ancestors who left one place to come to a new place. Either they were some who were in dire straits and there was no other choice, so why not?
Right.
Or they were the risk takers.
Right.
Yeah.
So America is full of people who are either have that there's nature or nurture, right? But either way, they have this risk taker in their blood,
Right.
some of them, or they just will do kind of anything.
Yeah.
And I think,
And the reference to Grant being in office
right?
means we're literally in the years immediately following the Civil War.
Yeah.
So yes,
Right. Yeah.
there
Right.
is a lot of devastation.
And there's also the sense that
There was also that little thing Grant didn't inhale.
didn't inhale, right? I mean, that was a
Yeah.
good joke.
Hilarious.
But if I know, see again, it doesn't
Anachronism.
right. So part of what this whole movie is about is a bunch of people who found themselves out west who didn't want to be there, and so they had been sort of on the wrong end of the sifting. They had charged out thinking, I'd love this, and then found out, no, I don't love it, and I'm going to come back. It doesn't mean that people who are out west shouldn't be out west. It doesn't mean that people who are out east should stay. It just means find where you're comfortable.
People find peace within yourself, and you will always be peaceful wherever you go.
Oh,
Right.
there you go.
So that's really
That's
what
deep.
Bad Movies Rule is about. It's trying to find that peace with
You're right.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah,
definitely.
I think so.
Didn't
You've
happen
now
during this
come to
movie.
the meditation portion of the podcast. If you're driving, pull to a stop. Otherwise, close your eyes, cross your hands, and think.
And find peace with yourself.
Now, don't think. Now,
No.
drive. But open your eyes. Open your eyes.
Open your eyes.
Yes, that's the important part of it. Yeah. But one thing I wanted to say about the anachronism, right?
Please.
I think you'd make a valid point. If it's done correctly, though, I mean, Mel Brooks would do that
There you go.
all the time.
That's it.
Like you had a perfect opportunity for it
Yep.
with the guy with the bag on his head to put the Aints on it from when the Saints fans used to
sure.
do that around that time period.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when Chappelle pumps up his Reebok pumps in Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Right.
Right? Like you have the ability to use it as your punchline. And then were opportunities throughout this movie where I was just like, Mel Brooks would have made that joke.
Oh, yeah.
And he would have crushed it. Or I'm drawing a blank for whatever reason on the guys that did the airplane movies.
The Zuckers.
The Zuckers. There you go.
Yeah.
And it's like, there are people who are really good at knowing when to drop those in.
Right.
And it kills.
Yep.
Right.
And then there's people who apparently forgot that it was a thing other than when they do it on accident. And it's like, you missed it here, you missed it there. There were so many chances for it, and they kept missing it.
They tried it at the bar when some people weren't asking for whiskey and they were asking for gin and tonics or whatever. And they're like, you idiot, we don't have that. But they could have done it bigger, like Zima, or something.
Yes.
Something.
Well,
Or Boku. Because wasn't Richard Lewis hawking Boku at this time?
Amazing.
It would have been fantastic.
Wow.
There
That's
were
a deep
also
cut.
places where they would find a joke, and you could tell that they found the joke. Like, so Richard Lewis is talking to his kids. I'm so embarrassed. It's all the quitters, and I liked his little speech about the quitters. But then it's like, I'm going to get your mom to turn this wagon around, and don't make me, So are we there yet?
Yeah, right.
All of these.
Gosh,
it's like, are you serious?
It's the lowest possible hanging fruit.
Right. It's like, okay, people used to ride around in station wagons and vans, and kids would ask these stupid questions.
Right.
Let's have these kids ask these stupid questions.
And face backwards in that third weird section of the station wagon.
But none of that is funny.
No.
It wouldn't be funny to have one of those jokes, and they had like 5 of them.
And it's a joke so easy that somebody off the street could write that.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why I say it feels like it was written by AI. It's like, hey, people like jokes about going to the bathroom.
Right.
People like jokes about lighting their farts.
No.
Yes, there's that old guy drinks pee from a canteen gag.
Yes.
Everybody loves
Well, and
that.
that's another one of them. It's like, if the kid had to go and you're not going to stop, you're going to tell him to piss off the back of the wagon. You're not going to say, hey, pee in the thing that we all drink from. Nobody's going to say that. And then,
when the guy takes it out of his hands, he says nothing to the guy.
And then the guy drinks it.
Hold on, that's full of my piss.
And it's still completely clear water. It's not piss. I mean, they could have put some yellow food coloring or something, but they don't even do that. And the guy likes it. And you're like...
That kid was really hydrated. It was fine.
He was. That was a lot.
I don't know what to think about any of this stuff.
All right, so our first scene with actually Mr. Slade in it is when we have the Pony Express guy ride up, and this is where you're right. They're trying to introduce him as like the baddest mofo on the planet. He's the kind of guy that spits his signature and points with gunshots, and then points again with another gunshot. Except this time he kills the guy. And you're like, all right, you've established this is a bad dude.
And
we'll
he
do
had 2
whatever
more
he's gotta do.
deliveries.
I know. Those letters will never get
Somebody's still waiting.
It would be like meeting Darth Vader. He chokes out a guy.
Right.
And then the next scenes,
There's so
Vader
much
is
Star
running around
Wars
going,
on.
I'm so nervous. I don't think I could do any of this stuff. He's like, what are you? Are you the guy that chokes out a guy? Or are you this weird dude?
Would have made it better.
Can't get anything
Oh my gosh.
accomplished.
But this is because when he comes to the camp, so the next scene is they're camping at night. And I always laugh, guys. Whenever they did the camp night, the background in the camp, it's obviously they went to an indoor studio to do the. Which
I think
is fine.
I could see vertical lines.
You could. You could see the corners in the walls.
There were times where you could see the background waving almost.
Yes.
Oh my God.
I could see the strings holding the moon.
Yes, dude, and fine. When we did Three Amigos, every one of those campsites was an indoor. They did that purposely, but it was like with like stuffed raccoons and things that like looked a certain way.
Puppets coming in.
Right.
Right.
This was supposed to still be outside,
Right.
and you could see like that corner of the wall, clear as day, with stars on each side of it facing each other. It was terrible.
Yes.
And awesome.
Because that's what this
That's
podcast
what
is
I'm
all
saying.
about.
I was like, yes, guys, this is great.
Goals.
Well, we should just had a painted moon on the wall.
Yes.
But see, that's not, it wasn't quite far enough to be hilarious.
Right.
It was just sort of disappointing.
Exactly. They didn't lean into it. But they're there. This is where Lindsay is crying because all 5 of her husbands are lighting their farts and laughing about it. And
Hey, Hollywood.
yeah.
Mel Brooks did the campfire fart scene.
Yeah, it's
Be done.
Don't touch it.
Don't touch it anymore.
Right.
He killed it.
It's over.
You can't top it.
There's a running list of things that no one needs to try.
And this is where we get Billy basically saying, well, you can come ride with me, pretty lady. And she's like, I can't. I have a contract. And they got the money. And it sets up that Billy and her would like to be together, but cannot. This is one of the few running through lines in the film.
If she's so big on contracts, why didn't she just include a writer that allowed her to
Opt out in
be
terms of
with
bestiality?
or just add him?
Oh, there you go. Sixth one.
Yeah.
Fine.
There's already that many. Just put the
I feel
writer
like she
in.
didn't have a chance to finish law school to learn that she
Probably
could do
not.
that.
She did.
I felt like part of the problem with the script was that there were certain things that had to happen. So it's like, okay, let's get her and Billy together. Let's get Harlow and
Sweet on Bell.
Together,
Ellen Greene,
and let's get So it's sort of like these scenes happen, and it's like, hey, little lady, I notice you're kind of a prostitute, and I'm a guy who likes prostitutes. So what do you think? And she's like, well, I don't know. Maybe you're not the leader of the camp. Well, okay, I'll go rescue a doll, and then maybe you'll like me, and then I'll fall because of a yucca, and And I'm thinking, okay. So first of all, it's so formulaic.
Yes.
It's like I don't see any real attraction between the two of them, or any reason why they should be attracted.
So I tried to explain it away, and there was only 63 people plus him, so maybe that's why she's looking for anybody maybe who's got any kind of sense of drive.
I mean, John Candy has his charms, but not in this.
But all of it,
I'd snuggle with John Candy. What is this?
It's cold at night in the desert.
Yeah.
But then
It's like it's memory foam.
She
You want to sleep on a bag of sticks and bricks, or do you want to sleep on a mattress?
Oh my goodness!
okay.
I hadn't even thought of it in that term. But there's a little bit later where she sort of propositions him, and he's like, "Well, I'm sorry, ma'am, I don't have any money right now." And she's like, "Fuck you!"
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Darn you! And it's like I don't understand this relationship. And there are a lot of places where in this film where it's like, oh, you can see that they had an outline.
Right.
This is the scene where they start to court.
I would like to
This is the
see
scene where they
the
fall in
script,
love.
like,
This is-
see-
You want to see how much of it was written as is?
And how much wasn't even written.
Yeah. Or they came up with on the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As a large, fuzzy fella that's got a thin wife, who's much more attractive than me,
beautiful.
I would like to say that I do understand this romance, and I think it makes perfect sense.
Oh, touchy, are we?
Well, there you go.
But you can see chemistry between people, and you can see where it isn't. So for no particular reason,
There was chemistry
no
between
chemistry there in
No.
any of this movie.
There was chemistry between Mini-Me and Fat Bastard, and they were a lot different in size. You know what I'm saying? He was like, "Get in my belly."
that wasn't the correlation I was expecting you to go with, but you surprised us,
Fair
Jim.
enough. I'm sorry. How about this? Who's the gal from Only the Lonely? John Candy was in a relationship with, Maureen O'Hara was his mother in that movie, and I can't remember the actress. I want to say it was the girl that played Ali Sheedy. I think it was Ali Sheedy.
Oh.
Or if not, it was an Ali Sheedy type.
Sure.
Okay.
We shall call her Gladys. Go ahead.
They had, and that was another skinny girl, giant guy. They had incredible chemistry, and it was a great romance in that movie.
Nice.
So it can be done.
Kevin
believably.
James, Leah Remini.
There you go.
I think that
There it is.
I don't think it's that's why it didn't work. I just think that these two, and probably not at the fault of Ellen Greene and
No,
John Candy.
there were a couple comments, but I don't see the attraction at all. Like,
no. I didn't mean that so much.
Sweaty.
I was meaning that
I'm sweaty and overweight.
there were a lot.
I don't know why your wife loves you, Patrick.
I don't
guess
either,
that's
but
what
I'm
we're
glad she
trying to
does.
get to.
Welcome to Secret Therapist. We have lured you here.
There were just
Come on out.
a lot of places in the plot that it seemed like, why is this happening? Because it has to happen.
Yes.
And
yes.
so you're like,
I mean, that's kind of why this movie happened, because John Candy was contractually obligated to be
and
there.
that's part of the problem is as a member
Thanks,
of the
CFL.
audience, you're watching this film that had to happen.
55-yard line.
And
Come on.
it's like you think, well, it had to happen, but it didn't have to happen to me.
That's true. Slade comes in, and this is where he kills the second guy. He shoots the guy that's on guard, one of the Fergusons, the first Ferguson to die, but he doesn't realize he's been shot in the face.
In the head.
For a few.
Like the back of the head, right through his forehead.
To the point where Slade's even confused.
The
why he's
brain
not
is
dying.
complex. There is that Phineas Gage guy who had the railroad spike through his head, and he was just changed man. So maybe.
What's funny is this is actually far more common in reality. In movies is the place that's told people you get shot in the head, you're dead instantly, where that's not always the case.
Yeah, or
in
weather
real life.
veins also.
Right? Or weather
Don't
veins.
always.
Yeah, weather veins.
I don't think we have as many,
kill many people.
examples of that, though.
But with-
weather vein.
But it's a movie, so
100% of the ones I saw, they died.
Yeah, exactly.
it's a movie, so movie rules have to supersede. And
Why did he slip? And perhaps I'm not a gun guy.
slip the gun
Slip the gun through his muzzle? Like, I thought he was trying to, like, make it so that the rest of the camp
Silencer?
wouldn't wake up.
It looked like a gun taco.
It was like he put like a blanket or a
A pot holder, maybe?
something
I don't
around
know.
it.
Right.
But then he slid the end of it out of it to shoot him.
Yeah. And ultimately his plan is to empty out their water. And because this is a cartoon, the next 5 shots are of like skeletons and buzzards and and them all going, water. It's been days and we don't have any water. They find some because he knows that there's a river over here. And at first they're like, there's no water. But then he falls over in the same place he was standing when they said there was no water. And now there is water.
The first time I looked at that, I thought, okay, I guess I didn't notice the water. Second time I watched the show, I was like, there's no water.
Because
John suddenly he's falling off in the same exact place and there's all the water in the world.
Right.
It's like, what?
And it was disgusting, stagnant, mossy, algae-filled water anyway.
I'm going to go ahead and say they probably didn't have any life straws.
No, and probably just a bunch of dysentery and cholera up in there.
But you probably were immune to all that stuff by then. Talk about, what kind of immune system.
How many times did you play the Oregon Trail? How many times did you get killed by dysentery?
All right, I died by dysentery a lot on the Oregon Trail.
Everybody crapped their brains out on these trails and died.
But they were coming back, so they had already built up an immunity.
They don't make dysentery on the way back.
No.
It's only made for the way out.
That's right.
Yeah.
Everybody
Reverse
knows.
dysentery. Now you're constipated.
It's just like with the Indians. They just dysentery lets you go if you're going the other way.
Right, exactly.
When you read history, it's always like, and he died at age 29. You're like, oh yeah, of course.
He crapped himself to death.
Yeah.
And now it's like, he died at 29. He's like, 29?
Oh, what?
How's that? What?
What?
How's that possible?
They did get one thing, speaking of history, they did get one thing kind of right, is we always have these ideas of the wagon trails being this straight line so that they're in each other's ruts, but that just means you're getting nothing but dust.
Yeah.
And so the fact that they were fanned out, actually, I was like, oh, wow, they actually got something right. But I almost believe they thought it was a joke to show that they were so disorganized they couldn't even be in a line.
No. Ferguson number 2 dies here as he also dives into the water but breaks his neck, I'm assuming, because it's just his legs sticking out.
Here's another thing that's very frustrating to me is that all the Fergusons die, and I'm glad that they die. But the reason I'm glad that they die is they're disgusting. It's not because they're morally reprehensible. It's not because they've done anything terrible. It's because they light their farts and because they smash everything up and because
and smash animals.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Morally reprehensible.
Well, yes,
Clayton.
that is. And actually, one of them said he killed his best friend, and then
That's true.
hit it. So I guess that they are morally reprehensible. But every time that one of them dies, there's a little evil person inside of me that's like, yes, another Ferguson is dead.
Yes.
And that feels bad.
And while the next Ferguson that gets nailed doesn't die, it is a great scene. They now come to this river crossing. Okay, this is after the river that John falls in. There's another river instantly that they're having to cross. There's no real sense of time passing in this movie.
That's convenient for them. We
no
have
sense.
It doesn't matter. So as they're crossing the river, one of the Fergusons falls off, tries to climb back up on top of Lindsay, and it's like one of the best mummer punches we've seen in any of these movies, just straight to the nuts on one of the Fergusons, and I was like, yes. We saw a really awesome one in Breaker, but not a lot of solid dick punches in these movies. So whenever they happen, I like to point them out.
Well, and he went right down into the water, and everybody cheered.
Yes,
even all the other Fergusons cheered.
That's right.
Right.
But we find out that everybody in town was like, "What the hell is the matter with you guys? Y'all are crazy." People usually use the bridge, and there's a bridge right. And now, not even Harlow would be that stupid to not see a bridge right there.
Yep.
And so here's one of the other weird things. On that bridge, there was this guy that I call the zombie Abraham Lincoln.
Yes.
We haven't seen him before in the party, but they say
Zombraham Lincoln.
He's one of the
Abraham Lincoln.
Yep, proper name.
They look at the bridge. Most people use the bridge, and they show the bridge, and there's this dude walking
one of the
across.
Fergusons.
Is he a Ferguson?
He was in the house the first time when they were all fighting and they all raised their
I
hands.
see.
But then you barely see him until this moment.
Right, and then he's like everywhere. I mean, he's like wandering around.
Yes.
And so
Probably had a conflict during the earlier parts of shooting, and then
and that guy who says most people use the bridge, he's one of the bosses in Office Space.
Yes, he's the one
so
that
you have
comes
one of
up.
the Bobs, and you have Dom, who was one of the bosses.
One that slaps him on the back really hard.
So again, there's no lack
Quality
of talent.
film. No.
There are people who are really good, and there are really good people who are trying really hard.
And Zabraham
up against it.
Zombraham.
Lincoln.
Yep.
Zabraham Lincoln
was kind of getting typecast.
I want that movie made.
That dude played the Undertaker in Back to the Future 3. That's measuring Marty McFly for his casket right before he fights Mad Dog. So typecast. All right. Let's keep going. We got right here, it's some stuff we've covered. This is where you have I'll have your mother turn this wagon around. Are we there yet? Kid peas in the canteen. Just hilarity across the board.
Yes.
Although I was glad someone called out how hard it would be with kids on the wagon.
Yes.
Because honestly, that would be really hard. No,
gosh.
I don't want to. Twitch. But I mean, you think of like kids getting a stick and a hoop if they can find one way, back, but like just any kind of
There you go. Keep up with the wagon.
Right, exactly. Run. 6.
I don't know.
Your job is to look for and then make up something that doesn't exist yet.
I would think that if you were in a wagon, though, you could just kick them off the wagon and say, okay, I'm tired of you.
Yeah.
And then, if the coyotes don't get you, then you get back on the wagon.
Yeah.
So that's now your new.
But they're valuable. They're your labor for coming up. So I don't know.
That's true.
It's true.
I feel
That's
like
true.
gotta keep.
This is the first time we're introduced to this whole thing with Zeke doesn't have a good memory, because Zeke suddenly remembers that Harlow did something either really great or really bad, but Zeke can't remember. And man, Sanderson is doing it. The actor's great. He's doing his best to sell this. I didn't have a problem with him at all. But I knew that I was like, whatever joke this ends up being, it's gonna suck. I just know it's gonna suck. I don't even care what it is. This is where they decided at the next camp to have a group therapy meeting where they had all the boys meet together to share about their lives in hopes that when Zeke had piqued their interest, like he did something, that John Candy's character Harlow would share whatever horrible thing this was. Right. But what ends up happening is everybody but him goes, and they all share horrific stories.
Horrific stories.
Their lives.
Right.
Right? This is where we got the one Ferguson who killed his friend when he was 10.
Right. And Phil, who did surgery and left half a bologna sandwich in somebody's lung and they died. Right. Okay, you should be banned from surgery from now on.
Oh, and then I forgot the horrible story that Clayton tells about the old lady. That was, do you remember that?
They actually
she
cut
was
it
asleep
off
with
in
her
the
mouth
middle.
open.
Cut it off in the middle of the story because it was like, this is too disgusting. Even us.
Even us.
Her teeth were on the nightstand.
I
figured her mouth was open.
Right. And I was like, please, somebody tackle him. And when they cut him off, I was like, thank God.
I was almost out.
no, thank you. Right? Gross.
This is why we've gone through the movements we've gone through in the last couple of years.
Well, exactly.
This was still considered
funny.
Hilarious.
That's hilarious.
The women, meanwhile, are in a sewing circle on the other side of camp. And we get this thing where it looks like they're going to ostracize Belle because she's a sex worker. A whore, as John Candy refers to her.
Entrepreneur.
That's right. She comes over and it looks like, they're all going to shun her because she's a whore. And turns out they just want to ask her all the questions that they're all curious about. Mm-hmm. And, do you actually have to blow? How do you not fall asleep? I don't remember what all the stupid
He says the average male is X amount of...
4.5 inches.
Now,
That's true.
She goes, my husband says that the longest recorded penis is 4.5 inches. Is that true? And they cut away before she answers, but I was just sitting there going, get his back and say that that's true, please. Nobody has to know but her, but just tell her that's true.
So that was that little sequence was close to being funny.
Right.
Yeah, it was almost there.
Because you were like, you expect that they're going to not like her because of what she does.
Right.
And then it turns out they're all really interested to find out.
Because so often comedy is that, right? You're setting up an expectation.
Right. And so it was really close.
I even stopped and IMDb'd the wife of the banker, whose name is Ingrid Nuremberg, who was Henrietta. But I thought she's
great.
Delightful. She's just did exactly what her
she's great.
job was.
The other wife, not so much.
The one, what was the mail order bride's name?
Lindsay.
Lindsay, yeah. When she first said it, I was like, hold on a second. You're out here married to 5 men on a contract and you're judging her for her. Yeah. But the funny thing, too, is that it was actually a fairly, progressive, intelligent conversation where people were talking openly about sexuality, which it was kind of like an unexpected moment in the middle of this
rules
for sure.
In the Midwest.
No, women can enjoy it too.
Right.
They the next day they come about Indian country, okay, and they have this tree with all these skeletons and things hanging off of it, and they're like, all right, this is a warning, right? That if you can see this warning, it's too late for you, or
so
whatever.
everybody take off your shoes.
But we're still going to get on our horses and
we're going to be in our wagons with no shoes on.
Yep.
Well, except John C. McGinley. He's got a fabulous pair of mocks.
The moccasins end up saving their lives.
Right?
Right? Because they end up camping, because they're all idiots, right next to the Indian camp. Okay? which
in an arroyo, a dry riverbed.
Right.
So they came at night because they were supposed to move at night and not during the day.
Right.
And then they all discovered, oh my gosh, we're right in the.
We're getting all kinds of vocab today.
Yeah.
That's true. But they're like, how do we let them? You're embarrassing yourself to whoever the guard was. You let them right into our camp. He's like, well, one of them had moccasins on, right? And he just cut to McGinley just like lounging over the side with his feet up, and it was just hilarious.
That guy was what was his wind in his hair?
Yeah.
In Dances with Wolves.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was the guy.
Yeah.
The chief, ultimately, they were all brought before the chief, and the son, the young son of the chief, wants them all murdered in horrific ways. And the chief, as we said before, basically is like, no, they're going the right direction, right?
Yeah.
Like we want
them out of here.
We want to encourage
Right.
more of this. Like, let them. Not only are we going to let you go, we're going to escort you all the way to where you're going.
Yep.
Right. So fantastic, right? I did like the bit. I tried, because I like to give these movies as much credit as I can. I tried to mark moments where I thought something was actually funny. I don't have very many on the sheet. Okay. But I did like when he calls him, what did he call him?
Little Feather.
Little Feather. And he's like, I hate that name.
Dad, I want a new name.
So, all right, escort them, big snake that makes women faint. And he's like, yeah, hell yeah, let's go. It's like, all right.
All else
fine.
fails, dick joke.
I'm a simple man, Patrick. I don't know how else to explain it.
It's fine.
Okay.
Actually,
Farts and dick jokes can be the backbone of a movie if it's got,
As you can tell,
flesh.
this was right up my alley.
I'm sure you love it.
Oh, yeah.
just before we move on, I have to point out that
Please.
that line about white men moving east is what we need.
Yeah.
Then we can maybe have our country back.
Yes.
I mean, there's a sense of profound sadness in that line, and a kind of honest look again at the American experiment, where we're going to go out there and we're going to take all this land from these people who've lived there for 10,000 years and claim it as our own. And so that particular line, I thought there was a gravitas to it that they probably didn't intend, but basically saying if white men go east, then we can have our world back. It's like, yeah, that's an undeniable aspect of being American.
Is this when they soon after had like a big dance? Everybody was just like playing. There was some guy in the fiddle who was just kicking some serious butt.
That was
dancing.
shortly after this. Yeah.
I really, really liked that scene. It was actually fun to watch. But they were having a great time.
Yes.
They were playing that Buffalo Girls song that you hear in It's a Wonderful Life.
That's right.
Girls, won't you come out tonight?
Good stuff.
And actually, the
before
escorts.
that, we had the Abraham Ben Ruby quartering.
Yeah, this is what's going to happen. So they had tied up.
We got to talk about that.
They had tied up one of the Fergusons to 4 different horses.
Jerry from ER.
He
was the desk clerk.
That's right.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Yeah.
He needed an ER.
Well done, sir. Well done.
Abraham Ben Ruby.
Well done.
And so when Harlow gives the young son of the chief the gun to say, this is a gift, thank you, he goes, hey, a Colt 45, and fires it in the air, and the horses rip another Ferguson apart. And so we're down one more Ferguson.
And then it's like sitcom level.
Oh no! Or another farter gets ripped apart into 4 pieces.
Yeah, because that would have been a horrific scene.
Right?
It would have been, as well as the fact that so there's a number of problems here. One is that somebody just got drawn and quartered, which is horrible.
Yeah.
Second of all is that they weren't even doing it right. I mean, all the horses just had a rope around their neck that was tied to his leg. There's no way a horse with a rope around his neck could run and pull a guy apart. It has to actually be harnessed, so that you could get the full weight of the horse, not just have a horse, garroting itself.
Have you done this before?
Why are you so expert? Why are you such an expert in this?
Why are we bringing this up again?
You brought it up, man.
So, and then also just, it's okay. It's funny to laugh at this guy because he's a fart lighter. You know, I mean, to decide, okay, these people are disgusting and we want to get rid of them because then the bride can have this handsome young guy,
Oh, absolutely.
There's a real conflict.
I agree.
That you feel.
Slade, this is when he's now set up his Wile E. Coyote traps along the way. He's got this boulder thrower that he apparently took a week to construct.
Just shoot everybody. Just get more bullets and shoot everyone.
He just rode ahead of them. He rode ahead of them so far that he had time to construct this elaborate trap
Right.
for them. And then the whole time he's setting it up, he's in fast forward. I know you did as a joke the yakety sax song before, but he's literally moving in fast forward while he's going through all this stuff. And then he fails, and I thought kills himself.
Right, because it goes flying
off
the edge
of a cliff.
And and then the boulders land on
Crush him.
Right.
And he's
Fine.
fine.
But a weather vane.
But he has an
Different
other
story.
arm, I should say. His other arm is backwards. It comes out of the rocks backwards.
Yes.
And he looks at it as a beat for comedy, like, oh, my arm seems to be broken. But then his arm's not broken the next time we see him.
Right.
It's fine. So I get, if you want to be
It's a binary world.
cartoony,
Dead or fine.
fine. But then he's got to have his arm in a sling or something because,
Yes.
Everybody's sad.
okay.
I think the joke has to go farther or less.
Yeah.
There's a way in
They
which
never
so
threaded
having all of these boulders that are lined up and that he's trying to get to
Right.
go over the edge, that's almost believable. And so then when it doesn't work and he gets crushed by the boulders, but he's not really crushed and he's fine, it's like, if he had the grand piano on the top of
Perfect.
the mesa, and then you'd be
Right.
like, what? Where did he get a grand piano?
Right.
And then whatever happened with the grand piano, with the sound of a grand piano hitting the side of a cliff as it's going down, that
Right.
would be a funny sound, especially if there's a guy in it when it's happening and he's singing and it's going. So do it bigger or
Right.
do
Yeah.
it smaller, but don't do it medium. So that
just the whole movie is just
No reason.
it's so stupid.
So then they meet, right? Finally?
Close. So at this point, with the next scene is them is the Julian bathing Billy scene in the river.
Great,
is
yeah.
what happens after this, right? Where we cut to Julian covered in soap and he's scrubbing Billy's back. And Billy, the scene is supposed to show how naive Billy is, that he just doesn't, think that there's anything different about Julian.
Yep.
And Julian is, the audience all knows, but I just wanted to use the scene to illustrate the fact of how terribly they are at landing anything, because they had the setup for whatever reason. And then the joke of it is that he sees he has a boner and doesn't know why. Mm-hmm. And then we just cut to the next scene.
do you see a mermaid?
Yeah.
That's it. That's your payoff line right there. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
It just drove me nuts.
I know. Well, that's the thing. They were all joke-like
Right.
without being jokes.
Said. Right. The next scene after that is when Audrey, I can't call her Audrey,
Belle.
invites John, propositions him.
Our guest.
Guest.
Be our guest.
That's right. Come into my tent.
UM.
So is that move with the umbrella? I've not seen that before.
No, that's supposed to be, that's international code for I want to sleep with you.
Can you come over and we'll...
They didn't have lights yet. That was the red light.
That was that was
Roxanne,
some 1870s Riz. Okay, that's what that was.
Turn on the red light.
You
Just
don't
flash
have to
the
pop
umbrella.
that umbrella.
Yeah.
Or I guess that would have been
Do a little
a
parasol
parasol.
pop.
Yeah,
Parasol pop. Oh, nice.
that's going to be next year's summer banger. The parasol pop.
Parasol pop.
And this is where they have the halfway there party where they're all having a great time, like Nicole said. And Harlow tries to apologize to Belle. Right? He goes,
Halfway there party. Is this like the people that put the 13.1 on the back of their windows because they ran half a marathon?
Right.
Look, I know I'm fat. I couldn't run a marathon or a half
But look, I
marathon. I
didn't
know
die.
you're all going to say it, blah, blah, blah.
But part of the problem
But still,
here is that the
it's
halfway...
the only time we celebrate half of anything.
The halfway party is when the audience is like, this is just half over?
Oh,
Jeez.
no.
Are you kidding me? I thought we were 3/4 of the way.
I've been listening to podcasts at 1.25 speed lately to get through the giant backlog of
It
them.
is the way.
And I wish I could have done that to this movie.
yeah, could have. This is, I want to highlight a really, I thought, good comedic take from John Candy, as he's a pro's pro. But when he goes to apologize to Belle and he says, ma'am, and he's dead serious, I just want you to know, I don't think of you as just a whore.
Hoover.
And then he gives the little head nod, like that's the entire thought.
And she's
She
like,
loves it.
oh, the
Right?
little hand.
I mean, he's a simple man. That's
Yeah.
it. There's,
No, yeah.
Sometimes that is,
That's it.
But that's
it is
And
your
I'm sure
birthday.
that's a hot button with
still,
her.
Yeah.
She wants to be thought of as more.
Right.
Yeah.
But again, that's comedy. That's great comedy when he can say a line like that, and you still think he's a good guy and he means it well.
Right.
And she feels like he means it well, you know.
And then everyone in the camp is having sex at that point. Right. And here's because all the Zeke, bless his heart. Boy, when the wagons rockin', don't come knocking.
That's right.
all I've got to say. Okay? Because if Zeke he just walks right up to Phil's wagon and just like, hey, you're not busy right now. Let's have a conversation. I just remembered, I think, what Harlow did. And I just.
So Laura said immediately when they opened up the flaps,
Yeah.
why is she behind him?
That's interesting.
So apparently, marital aids were a thing out in the Old West.
He's got the nightcap on.
He does.
And so I'm thinking, so human beings have been around for however long, and for most of that time, men have been wearing nightcaps.
He does have the screws.
When this has happened, and yet human beings have reproduced for all of this time. I mean, if you look up and you see the nightcap, are you thinking, what the hell is happening in my life?
You're certainly not thinking to yourself like, nice Ebenezer Scrooge hat you got on there, buddy.
I've been waiting for you to put that on all day.
That's right.
I'd like to see your gold.
Why don't you coming up into this wagon and I'll be Bob Marley this time.
Bob Marley?
What is it? Jacob Marley.
Jacob Marley.
I'm thinking Bob Marley.
He's like the Jamaican
That's a different kind of hat.
That's right. It's all about one love, baby. That's it.
It's over my left shoulder. I'm ready to go. It's over the right. Not tonight.
I mean, even men were wearing sleeping gowns.
That's right.
You know.
Well, it's easier access.
Yeah.
I mean, pants are a relatively new invention overall.
That's true.
Oh, yeah. But poor dumbass Zeke comes over. And then Ben shows up right after. And he even says hello to his wife. Don't talk to my wife.
Right.
In this specific scenario. Please.
Right.
Please. And they all get out of the tent.
I've often said that.
Yes.
And why her with him?
To people who interrupt.
Why is what?
Why her with him?
Oh, Constance?
Yeah, like I don't see there.
No, I don't see. She was. I don't know, I'll more about her later. But
You're talking about.
It comes after Will Patton and before the unsung hero.
Okay.
Constance, the Richard Lewis's wife.
Yeah, she was in a couple episodes. I want to say she was like the older woman type role with Alex B. Keaton.
Oh,
in a couple episodes, she had I think she had like a 2 or 3 episode story arc with him.
Interesting.
Where either he was into her or she was trying to seduce him or something. I don't remember.
They all get together and meet up, and obviously Phil's not thrilled about how this went down. But the revelation comes out that
something bad.
Harlow was the wagon master for the Donner Party.
Right. At first, it's just he did something bad.
Yeah.
And it's like, I can't figure it out.
I think it's something to do with reindeer.
And then it's Donner and Blitzen. Oh, yeah, he was at the Blitzen party. No, it's the Donner Party.
It's the Donner Party.
Yeah.
And
it could have been done in a funny way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That theoretically someone could have delivered it.
But they continue to choose.
I think
to not do that.
that's actually like the perfect review for this show. It could have been done in a funny way.
Yeah.
Theoretically, someone could have delivered it.
Differently.
And so there's a couple of scenes I'm just going to gloss over here because they're just, I mean, right after the Donner Party revelation, it snows in the desert.
Right.
In
June
snow.
in New Mexico.
In June or wherever the hell they are on the way to St. Louis from New
I guess
Mexico.
that's
Right. So they're at least south of St. Louis.
I mean, Kansas does get pretty nasty blizzards.
In June?
I mean,
fine.
Kansas sometimes gets blizzards.
So they eat Millie, right? They eat Clayton's prized girlfriend, and Clayton doesn't even react to the fact that Millie's being eaten.
No.
Nothing.
No.
Well, part of it is that the whole joke is supposed to be that that's like a person.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And don't eat that, don't eat that. And then, hey.
Hilarious.
It's his girlfriend, cow girlfriend. And so the whole thing is just completely uncomfortable. It's like, is it a person? No, it's the cow that he's been sleeping with. You know, it's like, wow. Okay.
So then Slade shows up again. This time his plan is to blow the bridge.
Sure.
Okay. But it gets dumped to some water or piss or whatever it is that...
We've already established that these people like water.
Yes. dumps it
They're
out
just going to dump it out
on the
and it's not
wick.
piss because it's not yellow.
Right. So she dumps water over the wick and extinguishes the wick. So Slade goes under the bridge, and for some reason it makes no sense, sticks his hand between the slats
and it gets stuck
above him for no reason. He's not trying to reach something.
No.
He's not trying to get to something.
No.
He just so he can get his hand stuck. That's the only reason. And then the thing reignites itself. And he is, I'm telling you guys, you saw the movie, standing a foot away from a package of dynamite.
That thing
when it
blew up like a car in an 80s cop movie.
Right. And he's fine.
Yep.
He's got a limp.
Launched. I mean,
yes.
Launched. But I guess there was no weather vane involved,
Right.
so he lives.
But again,
is this like something like a stake through the heart, but in the Old West, only weather vane through the chest?
If you're going to do the Wile E. Coyote thing, then
do it well.
Play with physics. Make it funny.
Something.
Have something that the guy does actually be the thing that undoes him, and then that causes this avalanche of consequences that you can see. I can see that's going to happen. I can see that's going to happen.
Like he accidentally drops his cigar, puts a stick of dynamite in his mouth and lights it, and then at the last minute realizes what's going to happen, and then it sets everything up.
That's funnier than somebody dumps some water on your thing, and then you try to relight it, and it won't light, and then it blows up.
Randomly stick your hand on the bridge.
Right.
So Slade finally is like, F it, it's just shotgun time, like Nicole was saying earlier. Time to just go shoot them all. But this again is just dumb because he shows up with a 2 shots in his shotgun and his pistol, and the entire camp gives up. They all have guns. There's 6 Native Americans with bows and arrows.
They're completely tied up.
Right. Like while he's tying somebody else up
with a gun,
everybody else would not be tied up.
Right.
And perfect opportunity to kill him. He'd have to put the shotgun down to tie the people up.
Yeah.
This is just, it just makes.
Why does it happen? Because the script says.
No reason.
That's right. Okay. Phil tries to save the day. He goes, maybe just take a time out and take some time for yourself. And hey, maybe just don't kill us. Right.
Right.
And this is where Julian, who apparently while he was tying everybody up, snuck off with a new wardrobe and like got changed behind a bush somewhere.
I gasped. It was beautiful that he was like,
yes,
had wherewithal. This is not the right word I want to say, but I'm so glad they didn't make his character like, I can't do it. He got to be.
Well, there was when he walked up, and it's like, okay, that's the Old West gunslinger macho monster, and he's so good at it.
Sure.
And you're like, I'm in. I am totally in on this. That was like a little 5-minute section of the show that was like, wow.
Other than the
if
fact
they could have figured out how to do more of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Other than the fact that it meant that while his friends were being captured, he just went and picked an outfit out of his trunk to go run off
and had a
change.
cappuccino.
I've done that.
Had a cappuccino.
I've done that. If I realize I could be the hero, I'll change my outfit and then come on out.
And not that he had to be particularly macho and the opposite of what he was, but I love that he had agency. He could do something. I was glad that character.
But what is in this movie with people not realizing they've been shot? Because it happens again with Slade.
Well, again, Wile E. Coyote, in the air until you realize you're in the air.
There's also no wound at all on him.
Sure.
At all. Then he goes to walk away and say, wish we could have met under better circumstances. Turns around, fires about 16 more shots into Slade's gut.
Yeah.
Slade still isn't down, has a couple more lines, and then finally dies.
The blood drips really weirdly.
Yes. But what?
One of the wounds disappears.
Cool.
Yeah.
After, the initial one, he looks down, holds his hand up. Somehow it's dripping on his hand, despite barely touching it. Then when it shows back to him, that wound is gone on him.
Right.
Then he hits him with a bunch of other shots, and then like weeping pinhole blood droplets coming out of him.
And he says, "Happy Valentine's Day."
I got a very like Waco Kid, Gene Wilder moment, like when he presents back in full regalia, like he, got the same kind of curly-ish hair that Gene Wilder had and all of that.
Well, and not to jump too far ahead, this character actually does belong in the Old West.
Yeah.
And you can completely believe it after seeing that scene.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
So
he's fantastic.
I'm supposed to believe that gunshots will kill this guy after a dynamite going off next to his face didn't. This is just some of the inconsistency.
Well, and part of it
was dysentery on the bullets.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Part of it is that none of the foes are up to the challenge. So you have this fellow that's trying to stop them who hires Slade. You have Slade. Then you have the next foe.
Right.
And they're all just sort of like, oh, we need somebody to oppose these people. So here's another one.
Right.
Here's another one. Here's another one. And, it's like, actually, could we have just like one foe? But
honestly.
Well, the biggest problem, too, is the tone of the movie is like that they're bumbling idiots. And so it does feel kind of wrong to have somebody in the group actually be competent.
Yeah.
Right.
It felt like they should have just continued to like be idiots who stumbled out of harm's way rather than having something that took a stand.
That's true.
Although it is a smart choice sometimes to be known as the guy who wasn't going to be any trouble.
Right.
Survival technique.
Yeah, and there's a running joke that I haven't been talking about because it ultimately fell flat. But throughout the film, up to this point, there's been about 6 or 7 different insert shots of a group of desperados riding to catch up to our group here. And this is where it culminates after this point, where they finally have arrived, you think, at the camp to kill our characters here, but they're just at the ocean.
The ocean.
Yep.
It's like...
And that's the last we ever see of them.
Seriously, that's how worthless you are.
Yeah. They just rode all the way to
These
the
are
ocean.
people heading east, and you ended up at the Pacific. Okay,
Hilarious.
What?
I still think they wound up at the Gulf. Like the Gulf of Mexico. Like
Sure.
on the,
Yeah.
I have to say that I did have anxiety when John Candy's character was looking at the fork in the road, and he was like, "We're going to go this way," because I have been that guy when the phone doesn't work.
Yes.
And you're like,
Oh, no.
that's east. We're going east. And then you travel east for 5 miles and find yourself, I can't get across the river here.
Yeah.
So now we have to drive back and listen to everyone talk to you while you're driving back about why, how come you didn't take it? It's like, well,
obviously it was the other way.
Yeah, obviously. It's like, obviously now.
Because you're the first group of cowards I've ever worked with that wanted to go the opposite direction of everybody else.
When John Candy was in a bar making his decision to actually go back to them, he takes his bottle and goes in, and it like kind of breaks the bottle.
Yeah.
It wasn't. I think that was like, that's good enough. Move along.
Good enough.
Next setup.
J.P. Moreland is now calling in the cavalry, and there's another throwaway joke there about, well, who are you calling in? He's like, no, literally the cavalry, you idiot. They try to do an airplane joke, like, well, it's a group of people that wear blue and yellow scarves.
And they also try to do the whole, this from being a pastor. People say the Calvary.
Yeah.
Bring in the Calvary.
Right.
No, Calvary is where Jesus died.
place.
Cavalry is what we're talking about.
Yes.
And they did a couple of those little jokes.
All right. So
There's so many more scenes, aren't there?
yeah, I'm just trying to catch up to where I was here. All right. So this is where Harlow leaves. This because Ben outs him in front of everybody being the leader of the Donner Party. Because Ben hates him. He's like, you know what? There's more of us. We can overrule you. He was the leader of the Donner Party. And this is where Harlow takes off on his own. And the cavalry show up, 3 of them, Don Lake and 2 subordinates, to say you have 24 hours or we're going to come and kill you. You've all been labeled as insurrectionists, and the United States military has sanctioned us to kill you all, and or you're gonna face retribution or consequences. And as they're about to ride off, he goes, I couldn't believe this line in this movie. He goes, what kind of consequences? He goes, well, your standard cavalry massacre. He knows about it, and like points over at. You can ask. He goes, you can ask him about it.
Right.
My jaw dropped. Like, as goofy and light as this movie has been, and then they throw that joke in there.
But that is true. I mean, the cavalry did some friggin'.
But it was such a dark joke for this movie,
right? But the lieutenant. There were a lot of ways in which he was doing a very subtle performance. He would show up, and it was clear that the guys weren't listening to him, and he was sort of frustrated. And it's Lieutenant, sir, and then he gets off, and then he starts talking to everybody else, and then the guys start leaving, and it's like, okay, so nobody's listening. I mean, there were a lot of little subtle, wonderful things that he was doing, and then that particular joke, which is. It is a joke, but it's also a kind of
He was also in Dances with Wolves.
He can explain
Lieutenant.
it. Yeah. Oh yeah.
So
right.
I thought it was good. It sort of outpaced the movie.
Yeah.
It didn't belong in
No, in
a
this
movie of
movie.
this scale.
No.
But
Maybe that's why
was-
they put in the, what time do you have? 24 hours from when?
Yeah.
right.
Oh, I should have said
try to-
2:30.
I just said
Right.
2:25. Oh, God, I just said 2:30.
What difference does it make?
Right.
Yeah. So this
2:30
is
is when you go see the dentist.
where nice. Clayton shoots his brother for stealing his tobacco. And this is supposed to be a big moment for Richard Lewis's character. Like he picks up a scalpel again for the first time.
And he kills a guy.
And he kills him.
He's so excited that he
Yes,
did
I
everything
did it.
fine, except that he actually kills
I got the
guy.
bullet out. Oh, is my brother getting? No, he's dead. But I got the bullet out.
I know.
There was a way to
It's like,
deliver
wait,
that.
what?
They kept drawing the punchline
Right.
out, I
When
think was the
everyone
problem.
knew he was dead.
Kind-
Because I think the
stiff.
simple
Yes.
fact that he took the bullet out was his success, not the patient
No.
surviving. That can be a
Right.
funny joke.
No.
But not when you slow walk
Right.
your punchline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And talk about telegraphing or rather shoehorning a really like a
Everybody got that?
kind of plot moment as we cut to Charles Rocket, who in the same year was the bad guy in Dumb and Dumber, 1994, was the kidnapper, right? And now he's playing the general of the cavalry. And we're
Now-
just going to shoehorn, like him and Harlow have a backstory.
Right. So I thought it was ridiculous that he
Yes.
was shoehorned in here
Yes.
and he suddenly showed up. I thought that
Yes.
the actor was totally doing everything he could do with the role.
Phenomenal.
He
I
was
thought it was the
fantastic.
best performance outside of John C. McGinley in this movie. I loved the choice, the voice,
Yeah.
the way he
Right.
played it, everything. I'm like, can we have had him be the
know.
antagonist through the entire movie?
It's like he suddenly shows up and you're like, where the hell have you been? Why didn't they make him the antagonist
Yes.
at the beginning?
Especially because him and Harlow have a history.
Right.
Right? He was a Harlow. He's like he's having a nightmare or whatever. That's how.
He's just this weird rock and roll cavalry.
And I got that mixed up.
Yeah.
He's the one that was in
Yes.
Dances with Wolves, not the lieutenant.
Got you. Right. The other one.
Yep.
He was
Harlow's out
he
here.
was terrific. It's like I almost felt like, wait, you're overacting. Your
No.
character's not that important. And yet he was so great in the character. It's like, why couldn't we have had this guy
And nobody
from the
knows.
beginning?
Nobody knows that I raided his party for weapons and ammunition.
Especially if that guy had hired the Wile E. Coyote guy, then it would have made perfect sense.
Yes.
It's like that guy's
Yes.
trying to hide the fact that he killed the Donner Party by taking all their horses
Right.
and all their supplies. And so he's hiring this complete inept boob
Yes.
that's going to try to blow up bridges
Well
and do all these
said.
other things.
I mean, but
And
the
you'd be
wagon
like,
master wasn't what got the Donner Party in trouble anyway. It was a frontiersman that wanted fame.
He's like, no one's gonna know. Secret dies with him. Kill him tomorrow.
You know,
All
there's
that,
this
yeah.
big epic fight between the two of them at the end of it,
Yeah.
and it would have been more meaningful if that guy
Yes.
was the villain from the beginning, rather than he's a villain shoehorned in 5 minutes before they're punching each other.
Our listeners are probably getting a lot of writing ideas.
Yeah, see? Perfect.
For
This
free.
is like
Rewrite this.
We didn't realize it, but this is a backdoor kind of how to write a screenplay episode.
Yep.
So
But actually, I have to tell you, as a writer myself, sometimes you get to chapter 23 and you meet a character, and it's like, that guy's got to be in chapter 2.
yeah.
What am I doing?
Yeah.
There he is.
Yeah.
And actually, if you have a character that just talks like this guy does,
Yes.
as soon as he wakes up and you hear him talk, you're like, I know who this guy is, and he's a
Right.
lunatic.
Yes.
And I want to watch what he does. If you're a writer and you have a character who does that, first of all, what happens is you've given up control, because anytime that you write
Yeah.
that character in a chapter, that character's going to take over the chapter. And you have to just sort of stand and watch and see what that character does.
Yeah.
And then if you decide, I'm going to put that character at the beginning of my novel rather than the end of my novel,
Yes.
then your novel completely changes because that character's in there. But guess what? Now you
done
have
it.
a real person.
Should have done it.
With. Right.
Nobody knows. Well, except for me, sir. Well, okay. Now you got to decide what you want. He's like going to shoot his lieutenant,
Right.
It's just, I thought it was a well done thing. And they're basically going to.
And then he wants a bedtime story.
Read me a bedtime story.
Tell me the one about this. And
Yeah.
do you want to hear? Yeah.
We do. I think the next scene before the cavalry will show up and attack the wagon train is this bar scene where Harlow has now left and he's going to get drunk in a bar. And this is the most obvious scene that John was not there, right? Because he comes in. It's clearly not him riding in and walking in. It's a very far away shot. He comes in, and all you see is his right hand from behind and a row of whiskey glasses. And all of the exposition is now delivered between two other people and not him. He doesn't say a single line in the entire scene. The bartender's telling some random dude we've never seen about what's going on. And it cuts to a shot of Candy from the first bar scene that's been green screened out, right? Or he's been chopped out of it, placed in this new one. He does the same shot of him pouring out the liquor that he poured out the liquor before. And then another actor slams down a bottle and off he goes, right?
See, I didn't catch any of that.
Yeah. Oh, and now
that's
when
awesome
you go back and look, you're like, oh, it's so clear.
But it wasn't a captivating scene. I'm sure I was just often.
Right. It's just like, okay, yeah, he's in a bar.
Right.
This movie was limited on captain.
And so as the cavalry is now going to ride in, can I just tell you, this is very, very funny. The big snake that makes women faint tells them, you know, what's up with you white people and always circling the wagons? Like, why don't you square the wagons? And then they've got to ride in a wider circle to get around it. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. So they square the wagons. And then once they've squared the wagons, I laughed. This unintentional, I think. Everybody has a flashback, okay? Like, they can never take this trip away from us no matter what they do.
Right.
Everybody's freaking flashback face had me dying. You know what I mean by flashback face, Nicole?
No.
Right? Where it's like Ella Green is just like leaning her head up against the wheel and just looking off into the distance, smiling.
Right.
Like the flashback face.
Right.
And all of them are doing their best to make a compelling flashback face, knowing that they're just doing it to camera and waiting for them to cut away.
Who knows what it'll be.
Or who knows what it'll actually be.
Yeah.
And they went for it, and it's hilarious. I appreciated all their flashback faces. And the joke actually landed to me that when they get to Zeke, he can't have a flashback because he doesn't remember anything.
That one was okay. That was
a good joke.
Yeah, that was, hey, you got one right.
He's like, he starts to do his flashback face and he's like, oh, I can't. I don't know anything.
No brain cells.
Followed closely by, to me, the funniest line in the entire movie is it cuts to the General Charles Rocket and he goes, all right, let's kill some people. Just the way he said it, the situation, I laughed, legitimately thought hilarious.
There are moments where you think, okay, that guy is sort of outperforming the movie. You know, and that's one of those.
All right, let's kill some people. And they all march towards the square, not march, they all ride their horses towards the wagon. But then when they realize they're just settlers, even his own soldiers are like, I'm not shooting.
It's women and children.
Right.
What are we doing?
Women and children. And then at this point, Harlow rides in, and that poor horse is all I kept thinking to myself.
When he rode in, I thought, is he wearing like a bodysuit? Because it was just really big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The way that the kind of the gut was moving, it was clearly the stunt double with a suit on.
Right.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay.
I think, but there are also shots of John clearly on a horse in the movie.
Yes.
And I just kept thinking, like, what kind of massive horse did they have to get?
Clydesdales. It came from St. Louis.
For John. Right? It's true. All right. So again, they're like, Harlow's back, and then he rides right up to the General and you know, says, oh, you know, you're back, and he says, all right, everybody, change of plan. Everybody just shoot Harlow.
Right.
He goes, well, that's fine, but I'm going to take your boss down with me. New plan, form a human shield around me and everybody else shoot Harlow.
Right.
Oh, it's a fist fight that took forever is essentially how this is settled, because the code of the West from the beginning comes back into play. He calls him out.
If a man calls you out in front of your men.
That's right.
Then you have to fight.
Got to do it.
Mano a mano.
But it's not funny.
It's not.
The joke being that after a few minutes they get bored, the kids go, hey, can I go play? Is that okay? Sure.
There's people cutting hair. There's people
setting dinner. Julian's braiding the hair.
Playing badminton.
Oh, badminton.
Right. There's a baby being born.
That's right. They deliver a baby.
Yeah. And then Julian says, vanilla wafer.
I forgot about that. Nice.
So that's one of the big problems of this film. So the climax of The Quiet Man is this big Donnybrook.
Right.
And it takes like 15 minutes, and they're punching each other for 15 minutes, and the whole thing is entertaining.
Yes, it's great.
And the climax of this is a fight where
no one cares.
You don't care, and that you just see somebody punching somebody and walking across.
They don't even care.
And then people talk, and then they punch and walk across, and people talk. It's like, so miss the whole point. If you're going to have a giant fight scene, make it fun. Make
Mel
it
Brooks
interesting.
Could have done it.
Blazing Saddles.
Yeah.
End of the movie, spilling off the set.
Into another movie.
You get a little, you get various other types of jokes running throughout it.
A dance number.
Yeah. I mean, yes. Mel Brooks is the master. Everybody stop trying to be him because you can't be.
I knew you would hate this because you love Blazing Saddles.
If you were going to culminate in a fight scene, make the fight scene worth it.
Right.
Yes.
And instead, what you did was take it and make the fight scene. Literally, all of the other people in the film thought it was not worth it. What are you doing?
The wagon train ends up showing up right as the Land Rush race is about to happen. I always think of what's that Tom Cruise, Nicole Kidman movie, Far and Away, where they have the big land rush, the gunshot, and they all ride across. And J.P. Moreland gets trampled because he walks right out in front of everybody before the gun goes off because he sees the wagon train coming. And there is another hilarious line by Charles Rocket who has part of his hair shaved off. Kid scalps me like that shows initiative. I'm proud to be scalped by a kid like that and make him a soldier in my army any day. Who's he talking to? It doesn't matter.
Right.
He's just going on and on.
Though I have to say that the scalping thing was very uncomfortable for me because the kid was practicing on his dad.
Right.
Scalping. And scalping isn't just cutting their
head.
It is
Their
slicing their skin off.
Right.
I mean, it is a terrible,
That's
horrible
stupid.
thing.
But his line specifically is hilarious. All right. It finally gets to the end where they're all going to, St. Louis is right there. And Harlow says goodbye to Belle. And they decide they're going to go to Canada where it's warm all year round.
Yes. How nice. How beautiful.
I mean, I hear Vancouver's supposed to be pretty nice.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Billy is there with Lindsay, and they make a wish on a falling star, which literally continues to fall until it's crushed the last Ferguson.
Yes.
Her contract is broken.
Everybody's thrilled about this, including the audience.
Because there must have been a clause about that.
Right. Julian is riding away. He says, I think, maybe I gave up on the West too soon. And she goes, I think Constance, his stupid wife, Phil's stupid wife, goes, where are you going? What's for you out there? And he goes, San Francisco, and rides off.
Yep.
So his character is difficult because he had a great performance, but there were ways in which his character was uncomfortable in terms of stereotypes.
Yeah.
Right.
But on the other hand, he was also this badass gunslinging guy that, in a way, I felt like it was very similar to his character on ER. He's this uncompromising...
Or Scrubs.
Yeah.
Very different show.
Sorry. Scrubs. He's this uncompromising guy that will just talk to you and will say whatever's on his mind. Mm-hmm. And at that point, you can't resist what he says because he's so brilliant.
But this time when it comes on screen, I'm not like, oh no, here. Instead, it's nice because in Scrubs, I got used to being like, okay, here he comes. Something's going to happen. But now I'm like delighted every time I saw him come out.
Right.
And guys, that's the end of the movie. So,
hey, we made it.
Wagons East is over. And now it's our turn, partner.
We've had 200 years for us to decide whether we're going to live in the East or the West, and here we are in Wisconsin. So clearly,
Little House on the Prairie. I mean, Laura Ingalls Wilder was from Wisconsin. I mean, this was the untamed West at one point.
Right.
Yeah,
For a
West
while.
of what is
Laura
always the
Ingalls
question.
Wilder, I mean, she wasn't shooting people, and
We don't know that. She wrote her stories.
that's right. She might have been shooting people and not telling people.
Right.
Keep that in mind, friends.
Would you
Maybe that's
confess?
Write your own story.
She was writing those whole things as a cover story.
Correct.
Of all
Nobody
of the
would believe
murders.
that I would be sacking towns.
That's actually that would be really an awesome movie about the real life of Laura Ingalls Wilder.
Sure.
Where she's writing these stories to cover up the fact that she's like this
She's the one that caused
serial
Zabraham Lincoln,
that.
Zombraham Lincoln.
I like that. So, guys, what we do here is we're going to go through some awards and things, but I think there is a way that we can discuss, at least before we get into all that how this movie could have been improved. You already had John Candy, but maybe there is another actor that we could have added to this that would have improved the movie. I don't think it would have made it a good movie, but it certainly would have been a better movie.
I could have used more height and more
muscles.
muscles.
Yeah, maybe as good as the performance was, could you imagine if Arnold Schwarzenegger had been the cavalry general.
There it is.
Right? That you only meet him at the very end of the movie. And all of a sudden, you just see Don Lake and he's in the tent. You just hear off screen, hello. And you're like, what? Is that Arnold? And then until he walks over to the bed and you see Schwarzenegger with the handlebar mustache and the goatee and the beard and everything, but still just yoked, you know what I mean? And just gets out of bed.
Yep.
And he's there. He's the antagonist that shows up to fight Harlow at the end. It's Arnold Schwarzenegger versus John Candy.
I'm hesitant because I feel like the guy who did it was really great.
I know.
But Arnold would be better.
Yes.
But if we did what we said, which was make that guy the villain of the whole show,
The whole thing.
and then you put Arnold in,
He shows up and says, all right, let's kill some people. Let's do it.
the whole movie could have been
That's right.
different. Yeah.
Listen to me.
Yep.
New plan. Build a human shield around me so that he cannot get me, and then everybody else, you start to shoot him now. Do it.
He is a human shield.
There you go.
Bam.
That's right. I don't actually need you. In fact, everybody just widen out because I'm going to just open my shirt and it's going to just use my pectorals to be the shield.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why I think almost, I mean, I hate to say it, but Harlow almost would have been, I mean, I know it takes John Candy out.
We can't take John
I
out.
get it, but I'm almost thinking like a la Christoph Waltz in Django Unchained,
yeah.
you know? He's just this,
Yeah.
you know, German guy roaming the West looking for work.
I just want you to know, I do not think of you as just a whore. Okay.
So what is
And
it
he
about
keeps
him?
going
I mean,
east all the way to Austria. Like he's
Right.
just got a boat and they just keep going across.
Just runs fast enough. He doesn't need
You
a
know,
boat.
part of it is that he is Arnold.
Yes.
Obviously, but there's a way in which his commitment is so extreme that as soon as he's chosen to play a part, you totally believe it.
Yeah, see,
He's
you
also
get it.
committed to being Arnold, I think, too. Like he's just committed to being himself. Like,
Yeah.
But
this
I've
is
never
me.
seen him and thought, Arnold, I don't know. You know, whatever role he's in, you're like, I'm in. I'm in. I've gotcha.
Cyborg from the future. Okay.
When he's in Twins,
Yeah.
I'm in. When he's the pregnant man,
That's right.
I'm in.
All right.
You know, whatever
Junior.
he does.
Can I posit that part of why we think that is because he embodies that male macho-ness where we're like, he probably won't want to act and play pretend, and then he does, and we're like, whoa,
Right.
he really went for it.
That's right.
I don't know if that's entirely it. I think that's part of it.
Just a smidgen.
But
part of it.
But for me, it's that he has a kind of he commits.
Right. Yeah.
And so when he's in,
He's in.
it's just like he's in.
All right.
If Arnold's in,
I believe
I'm
it.
in.
He's a Jewish doctor from St. Louis.
You know,
right?
So when
I believe it.
when he decides he's going to be a pregnant man, you're not thinking, well, he's a big macho guy. He shouldn't decide that, but I guess he decided it.
But that is
Instead-
part of the punchline.
But,
That's
right,
why
That's
when
why it's him and not Danny DeVito.
That's why in
right?
that
Like,
movie-
but still, when you see that, you think, I believe it.
It's
I'm
what
in.
makes the comedy in that movie work when he's like, oh, Larry, my nipples, you know, like because of who he is.
So there were a lot of performances in this show that were close.
Yeah.
That you know, like the guy that's the cavalry guy.
Yes. Charles Rocket. Yeah.
That was a really great performance, and if the part had been written better, so that he wasn't just, hey, 5 minutes away from the big fight scene, we're going to introduce this guy, that could have made a difference. But I felt like there were a lot of other people who were very good in the show, but none of them were quite that level of commitment that Arnold, where somebody just shows up. That the cavalry guy did.
Yes.
When he showed up,
Right.
you're like, I don't know who this guy is.
Right.
But I'm on board.
Sure.
Holy cow, he's in.
Right.
Right. And if we had had this all through the show from everybody,
That's true.
it would have been a lot easier to buy in.
I agree. All right, well, let's move on to our awards. And we always start with the most prestigious award we give out, the one to the actor that had the most intensity, that really went for it, sold out. The fact that they were in this dumb movie didn't matter. They were going for it. It's our Will Patton Award for intensity.
You want a war? I'll give you a war!
I don't want them to gain another yard.
You blitz all night! And if they cross the line of scrimmage, I'm gonna take every last one of you out. You make sure
They remember forever the night they played the Titans. What are you doing with a gun in space?
All right. Nicole?
Well, it depends on what one means by intensity. And by that I mean, if we take the Will Patton example, then John Slade, i.e. Ed Lauter, is that vibe. But I think the intensity I want to talk about is how much you brought to the actual character you have.
Yeah, that's the way I take it.
Okay. Well, then it is Julian Rogers, a.k.a. John C. McGinley?
John C. McGinley.
John C. McGinley.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fantastic. Total commitment.
Yep.
I thought he did a great job too. Awesome. So we got a couple people playing along with us from our Patreon today. And so Josh Bowman says, look, you know what I should do? I forgot on these guys. Let me go back here real quick. I want to at least make sure they get this in here because both of them also said how they would want Arnold to make this better. So Josh said put Arnold as General Larchmont. Kind of what we were just saying. Having a fist fight between John Candy and Arnold would be a great recipe for some physical comedy and a perfect end cap to the movie. Josh, I agree with you. And JP Dozier said, I think it would be funny for Arnold to play Gaylord Sartain's character as JP Moreland. The scene where he's playing with the little train set. Yes. I told you never to come in here when I'm playing with my toys. Stop it. Those have both been awesome. So thanks, guys. All right. But anyway, Josh Bowman for Will Patton says, I would have loved to have given this to John Candy, but Harlow just wasn't an intense character. Instead, I'll hand it to Gaylord Sartain as JP Moreland. He was one of the only characters who got a chuckle out of me, and I do feel like he was honed into the classic rail baron tropes. So, Patrick, as that goes over to you now, who's your vote for Will Patton?
I was undecided.
Oh.
But John C. McGinley makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, he was the only part, I think, of the movie that the only real character I cared about.
Yeah.
And felt like he was going all in. And yeah.
All right. I think that's a good vote. And JP Morgan almost said, JP Dozier says, James, I know you don't want us all to plant our flags on one person, and normally I agree with you. But there was not just one person that took the role to the level of Will Patton. It took the entire Ferguson clan to be able to achieve it. Every single one of them played their roles perfectly, and it only worked because they had each other to work off of. From fighting constantly, lighting their farts on fire, and even doing stupid things to get themselves killed one by one. As a whole, they were able to reach that level, and I plant my flag on the Ferguson brothers. Wow. Normally...
Yep.
That would make me annoyed. But you know what, JP? I'll let you have this one.
To some extent, the Ferguson brothers were one character.
They really were one character. Yeah. So, but I'm also going John C. McGinley on this. I just think there wasn't like, even Slade, I don't feel like was nearly intense enough as he needed to be because they just changed him to a cartoon. But I'm going to go.
I agree with you. I think that John C. McGinley was intense in every single scene in a different way.
Yeah.
It wasn't just total, plunged intenseness.
Yeah.
It was just every scene that he was in, he was totally in. And
in the reality of the character he was.
100%.
Yes,
So you going with him as well?
Yep.
All right. Well, that means that John C. McGinley is going to win the Will Patton Award. Nice job, man. All right, guys. The next award we give out is to who was the worst actor in the movie, which is why we named it after Steven Seagal. It's our Trash Can Full of Dirt Award.
Trash can, oh trash can, it's a trash can full of dirt, yeah.
Love never dies, and neither do they. Love is eternal, and that's a long time.
That's right. Nicole.
I don't want to. Okay. Everybody knows by now I hate doing this.
I know.
But I could see a lot of other actors obviously bringing something different to it, but in the role that Richard Lewis played.
Oh.
Because, he brought his flavor, and that is what it is, but a different person in that role, I think it could have been one I would want to watch more.
Fair enough.
How about that?
Very well said.
I'm sure he tried real hard. There.
Probably.
There. Rest in peace.
Josh Bowman said, set a fire to the can and roast Richard Lewis right over it. The guy is the worst part of everything he's in. Oh, he's going a little harder than you did here.
I guess so.
I understand his whole thing is this whiny, self-deprecating, but holy cow, I will never understand how people find him funny. He was an unlikable sod the entire time that almost put a damper on the unstoppable charisma of John Candy. So a resounding vote for Richard Lewis as we go over to Patrick.
I'm going to say John Candy. No, I'm just kidding.
I was so shook for a second. I was what?
Gaylord Sartain.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I just didn't like the character in general.
Yeah.
I felt it was like an unnecessary thing that just kept moving different pieces, and I don't know. He didn't. The thing is honestly, like with this movie, I didn't think the acting was the problem.
Yeah.
Right.
I hear you.
I feel like they did the best. I mean, across the board, I feel like everybody pretty much did the best they could with the material they were given.
Yeah.
And for me, it was during the scene when they were like, he was saying, "Take notes." I don't have my notes. Just remember them. That's when I was like, "This is community theater." Which is, again, there's some amazing community theater, but it felt like new to them.
Right.
Community theater.
No, for sure. Look, JP Dozier went with my vote has to go to Charles Rocket as General Larchmont. This one I can't believe, JP, buddy. He just seems like he was just some random character thrown into the story to make John Candy not seem like a screw up with the Donner Party, since he took their supplies. He just wasn't entertaining at all to watch. The only time I kind of laughed at him was when he complained about how Phil's son scalped him. I mean, this is the subjective nature of these things.
Yeah.
So, but I wholeheartedly disagree. I thought he was one of the few bright spots.
I do agree with what he said, though, about the fact that it seemed like the character was kind of shoehorned in at the end.
Certainly.
Yeah,
But I think
that for sure.
But I do think that the actor did a phenomenal job with what he was given.
Well, that's
Absolutely.
That's the problem, and that's actually why the rating that I gave was not discounting any actor, because I thought that they all did as well as they could with what they were given. So I gave the trash can to the writers.
Oh,
It's got to be an actor, man.
Rob, I had
has to be
to
an
force you to
actor?
It has
plant
to
your
be an
flag.
actor.
Because if I let you off the hook, I've given so many people the business over not picking a person.
Because there's plenty of times I want to give it to the casting director.
And I've told him he can't, so it only is fair. You've got to pick a person.
All right.
Even if you thought they all were decent, who
I
was
think
the worst?
Adrienne Barbeau.
Who is he?
Adrienne Barbeau is that woman from the 80s that had the big boobs. I'm
Is she
trying
in
to
this
think-
movie?
No.
Okay.
I'm just trying to think of somebody.
Yes.
Okay. So
Well,
it's
I can tell you
got
who I
to
picked.
be Ed Lauder.
Ed Lauder. All right.
He's
Ed
the last
Lauder.
one on my list.
All right.
Perfect. Ed Lauder gets a random
Sorry,
stray,
Ed.
catches a random stray from Rob King over here. I actually went with Melinda Kalia, who played Constance Taylor, Richard Lewis's wife. Thought she was terrible. Apparently, she was in Family Ties for a hot minute.
But do you know who she married the year after this came out?
Who?
The director.
No way.
What?
I wonder why she was in this movie.
How do you know they didn't meet here?
No, I
Right.
don't know. But that's
Maybe.
what I'm saying anyway. So by my math, is there only one person that got 2 votes, and that's Richard Lewis. So Richard Lewis is going to win the trash can full of dirt
Wow.
posthumously.
This is actually not even his worst performance.
No, there's been other ones that are far worse.
I saw it in person 15 years ago.
He's dead.
He just recently passed away.
You did.
Really?
Like, I
Rest
want to
in
say
peace,
like
friend.
months ago.
Yeah, it was
right?
recent.
Yeah.
And then you guys voted for it.
I know.
Yeah, well, we can't.
So
It's
nice.
got to be a meritocracy here. You know, it's based on the work,
Yep.
not anything personal about the guy.
It's not like your
You know.
opinion actually killed him.
It honestly
Nearly did, but
Okay. Let's move on to our Unsung Hero
Unsung
Award.
Hero.
This is for an actor in a small role that improved the movie with what little opportunity they had, because there are no small roles, just small actors.
You know, every place you go, there's always someone who thinks he's a badass, right? Then there are those few who are. Are you some kind of a badass karate boy?
All right. Nicole, give me your bit player that did a great job.
The one I looked up, Ingrid Nuremberg,
Oh,
the wife of banker Wheeler.
yes, the one that wanted
I
to
thought
know
she
about
did a great job, and no one probably
Yes.
gave her any props whatsoever.
None.
Well done.
until right
That's
now,
right. Henrietta Wheeler for president.
30 years later.
Yeah, 30 years.
I love it. Josh Bowman said John C. McGinley. Look, the guy is so talented that he even brings the best out of a character whose whole shtick is just to be like, haha, look, he's gay. The face-off with Slade and still maintaining a flamboyant but also intimidating presence would make for a really good buddy western with someone like Harlow. Like, yeah, give me the Harlow Julian buddy
Sure.
western movie. I would have loved that. So that's a vote for John C. McGinley as we go over to Patrick.
I'm gonna go Ellen Greene.
Ellen Greene.
Yeah.
Audrey.
I felt like she was the one that kind of drove some of the humanizing of Harlow.
Yeah.
And I felt like she was authentic, and I felt like
Yep.
she was strong and, independent and not desperately needing all of these tropes of like,
Yeah.
she needs the man to rescue and all of that.
All
like,
that.
and I thought she did the job really well. And the fact that most of us didn't even recognize her until halfay through the movie because she was so like into that character.
Yeah.
I thought it was great. Plus, she's got red hair. So
I support that. Yeah, right?
JP Dozier also went with John C. McGinley because I think because of all the movies and shows I've seen him in, to see him as this effeminate guy kind of cracked me up. When he was on screen, eyes were on him and he just kind of took the scenes away. And then when he came out to duel John Slade, he was a badass with white and orange wrist guards on. I even had to rewatch the scene because I didn't notice the reason why he finishes Slade off and says Happy Valentine's Day and made the shape of a heart in Slade when he just blasted him. So they knew each other, I think, is what the intimation was, maybe? I don't know.
Oh.
Well, it's a hilarious joke to intimate that someone probably already, liked a man. So probably that's why it's hilarious.
Okay, hilarious. But that's the second vote for John C. McGinley. I'm actually going with Charles Rocket as General Larchmore.
Okay.
Yep.
Again, bit part, showed up at the end, and I thought stole the entire movie from me personally.
I think the same thing.
Yeah.
Charles Rocket.
Rocket.
You rocket.
So we are going to
Rocket Man.
What I need you guys to do is, because we've got a two-way tie between John C. McGinley and Charles Rocket. So if you had to pick between those two to help us break the tie, which of those guys do you think in a small role?
I think because of the small role, since Julian was so big, I
think Julian's probably almost too big of a part.
Right.
But all right, so we're just going to give it now.
Tie's broken. I'm going to stick with Ellen Greene.
Josh Bowman and JP Dozier. Don't get mad that we overruled you, but Charles Rocket wins. Okay.
Hey.
Let's do it.
And McGinley was kind of the hero of the movie.
That's true.
Yes.
All right, so this new segment that we have on our show called BMR Mountain is when we take some actors that have appeared in multiple BMR movies and we start to put them on what you want to maybe call a Mount Rushmore of their BMR appearances. And we say, all right, for those of you that you've seen the movies, you can obviously have some input here. If you haven't, don't worry about it. But what are some films or some actors that have been through multiple BMR movies, and then what would be considered as to have yet their peak performance in the movies that they have been in yet on this show? And so while there are a couple that have here for us, like, so Zeke was also in Black Moon Rising. He's only had 2 appearances. Thomas F. Duffy, this is actually his 3rd appearance. He was in Rubber, my favorite movie we've covered on this podcast. He was a scientist in Lost World who famously jumped into the mouth of a T-Rex. And now he was Clayton, the cow-loving guy. Same guy, Ferguson. So this is his 3rd performance. But we're actually going to be talking about, we're going to save Thomas F. Duffy for a future episode coming up in a couple weeks where he has an even bigger part. But we're going to talk about John Candy because this is actually the 4th movie that John Candy has appeared in on the podcast. So I'm curious, how many of these movies have you guys all seen? Have you guys seen Armed and Dangerous before?
No.
From the Eugene Levy, Tom. Okay. Brewster's Millions.
Yes.
John Candy's in Brewster's Millions. We covered that on the show. And he was in Nothing But Trouble with Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase, where he played both a woman and a man in that movie. Terrible movie. And then now this is his 4th appearance in Wagons East. And so I think the ranking is ultimately going to be left to me, it sounds like, but that's, which is fine. But I think John Candy is going to appear many more times. And so as he gets a 5th, 6th, 7th appearance, some of these movies will fall off of the mountain as better ones are replacing it. Because I'll tell you this, I loved his performance in Brewster's Millions, although it wasn't super comedic. It was more like that was left to Pryor in that movie. It's more like a straight man in that film. And so if I'm going just based off John Candy's funniest performances out of the 4 of these, I think that Armed and Dangerous for me is going to be number 1, even though the movie's not that great. He played off Eugene Levy and Meg Ryan really, really well in that. Some really good stuff. Then I'm going to say Nothing But Trouble. He played 2 characters, again, his sister and himself. Then I'm going to go Brewster's Millions, and then Wagons East I'm going to have 4th, because
as long as it's 4th,
the movie
then
just
we can agree on that.
Dragged down so hard.
The film was dedicated to his memory.
It was. I just sad.
They should have. They killed him.
I'm just so sad that this is his last film.
Yes,
absolutely.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
It's a travesty.
It is.
I mean, it's a travesty that he died at 43.
Yes, that's the ultimate travesty.
Yes.
Let me not get that twisted.
But I mean, I think the fact that There's a lot of talk about. There was stuff about he went on like a pretty significant like tequila bender for a couple days as a result of the Argonauts thing.
Right.
And he's contractually obligated to this. He had just quit smoking.
Right.
Like the man is going through a lot in his life at the moment that this is dumped in his lap. And from everything that I read too, like he did not like the script. He did not like the story. He did not like any of the stuff.
Right.
And just one of those things where it was like, let's just write him till we get every last joke out of him. I mean, the same thing that has happened time and time again with overweight actors who we know are engaging in very dangerous behaviors behind the scenes in their personal lives. Chris Farley, Belushi, and the list goes on and on and on. And it's just this thing where it's like, because we're getting yucks, we're not going to get them help.
Right.
Right.
Now it's sad.
How could you not
Screw the
enjoy
people that made this movie.
a film that says they came for gold, but now they'll settle for indoor plumbing?
Well, it comes time to give our final ratings, guys. And so ultimately we have to sum up our thoughts here with marrying the objective and the subjective is our jobs now. And so, Nicole, we're going to start with you and you have the floor. What are your final thoughts on Wagons
Since
East?
it's my floor, the first thing I want to say is I still feel guilty about saying that I was comparing to community theater as if it was a pejorative thing, ungood thing. But I mean bad community theater is what I felt like. There's a ton of amazing community theater. Get out and get a ticket near you. Okay. This movie's bad. The end.
I like it when somebody is so succinct with their words. I'm jealous of the ability to do that.
Josh Bowman says, I think that this movie truly speaks to John Candy's legacy. He takes what is a miserable and dragging script and elevates it to something that's at least watchable. Lots of the actors I feel are trying their best, but due to a lack of talent or care in the writing room, this movie falls flat. This isn't just an unfunny bad movie. It's a terrible movie from Josh Bowman. Looks like he's trying to give John Candy some props, but ultimately it's a terrible film. So, Patrick.
Wow.
The earth just shifted beneath me.
They said the rhythm was going to get you, and it did.
Here's the thing. I know it's been, we've joked about it. Like, eventually we're going to find a movie that Patrick likes.
Yeah.
Not yet. And the thing is because we've talked about it. Sometimes when we know that it's got these bad ratings and all this, we kind of go in already primed to maybe not like it.
Yeah.
I saw the ratings. I knew everything about that had been said about it over the years, which is probably a reason why I never really made the effort to go see it.
Yeah.
But I really, really, really wanted to like this movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
The cast, the character actors showed up in so many TV shows and movies that I loved. John Candy, I like Richard Lewis.
Yeah.
It was objectively a bad movie, and subjectively, I laughed once.
Yeah.
And it was a sight gag.
Right.
It wasn't even because of the writing. It was literally the part where they were going down the one fork, and then they showed it coming back the other direction.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I chuckled, not even laughed. And so, bad movie,
That's
full
it.
stop.
All right. I hear you, man. JP Dozier says, look, this was the first time I ever watched or heard of this film, and it was kind of sad knowing that it would be his last film because it was kind of a hard movie to watch. So using the dog crap scale, I love when people pull out the dog crap scale. This was like when your dog was really needing to take a massive crap and you were able to get him outside in time to do it. You're glad you made it in time so he doesn't crap inside the house, but as soon as he does it, a massive gust of wind blows by and tosses all that crap right back into your house. You can't blame the dog for this, but you're still pissed it happened. This was kind of a hard movie to get through. I had to take breaks watching it. There were a few good scenes and some funny jokes at times, but it just doesn't seem to keep it going long enough to really enjoy this movie. This is a bad movie that rules for me, but close to being a bad movie. If someone wanted to watch it, I could tolerate it, but I don't think this would be one I will be seeing for some time again.
Life is too short.
Barely a bad movie that rules. Rob, how do you feel about it?
So there are a lot of things that this movie is really good at, and one of them is a lot of good actors who are all trying really hard. Another is the musical score is very engaging. It's this Western da 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 da. This whole thing. It's the filming is very nice, other than the backgrounds and the nighttime scenes where you can see the walls.
Right.
It's got a fun premise of people going east instead of west. There are all these things that seem like they ought to work, and yet the whole thing is such a disappointment because it doesn't. And so as you're watching it not work, it's like you have antidepressants.
Right.
This is a depressant.
Yeah.
It's like the antidepressant. It's something that you watch and you think, I wanted that person to succeed and they failed. I wanted that person to succeed. They failed. I wanted that to work and it didn't work. I wanted, so it's not a bad movie that rules is one that you watch and all the failures are just wonderful. They're spectacular.
Right.
They make you feel better about life.
Yes.
Whereas all these failures are like, I wish it had been better. I wish it had worked. And so you end up with the show feeling sad that you watched it. Right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so I would say it's just a bad movie.
Yeah, Robin, I'm going to echo your sentiments. I don't even have, and I'm not usually one, Patrick, that's a minimum loss for words. I don't really even know what the hell else to say about this movie. It sucks. It's bad, and it makes me sad.
Right.
John, I love John Candy.
Yeah.
I love
great.
John C. McGinley. Every time he shows up in a movie, even stupid movies like Born to Be Wild, the stupid movie about this kid and a gorilla, John C. McGinley's in it. I'm like, yes, I'll watch
Wild
that
Hogs.
again, or Wild Hogs, or whatever. It broke my heart. This movie broke me in a way that some of these movies that are terrible haven't.
So do you think that it had anything to do with knowing what happens in real life to John Candy?
I think it does. I think it has to.
There was a pall over me the
that.
entire time. I was looking at him and going, he is not well.
Yeah.
It is clear that this is a man that is not doing well, and they're still like, make the movie. And it's...
I don't think you can separate the two.
No.
I think it's impossible to do that. Just like when you watch The Dark Knight, I feel like you can't separate that from Heath Ledger's untimely passing. And anytime something like that happens, they're just linked forever for that reason. And so it makes a bad movie even worse.
Yeah.
So at least with Heath, like his final movie, he won an Oscar for it.
Right.
And so it's like this celebrated, so we can still watch it and go, oh, at least this is.
And he got
the
to
final
know
note.
he was part of something, a big thing.
Right.
Whereas John Candy did not.
But see, this is also speaking to your point about community theater. I've been in a lot of community theater shows, and sometimes everything comes together and you're like, wow, this is gonna be great.
Right.
And sometimes things don't come together.
Yeah.
And you're in a show and it just doesn't come together. But then there are also shows that, like you say, there is a theme to them. I've been in a show where we were in a production of something funny happened on the way to the forum.
Yeah.
And one of our cast members died.
Oh.
6 weeks into or 3 weeks into a 6 week.
Oh.
Yeah. And so we had to replace him. And so we shifted people around and we got new people in. But, that show is all about the rest of the community responding to what happened.
The show must go on. Right?
And the show must go on. And it was a great show in the end.
Good.
It would have been a good show with him, but in a way, because we were all sort of like pulling together.
United, yeah.
It was even a better show, not because he wasn't in it, but because we all wanted it to be even better.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that does happen. And but the thing is that it happened so late in the production of this. It's not like anybody was thinking about that.
Yeah.
I was in a similar situation where I was the guy that replaced the person. I got a phone call saying, and this person didn't die, but they thought was going to, major car accident, like 19 broken bones, shattered pelvis, like on life support, all that stuff. Ended up pulling through, but obviously couldn't do the show. And I had to come in and step into a production where there was just like this like cloud over everything. And it's crazy.
You were actually, so I'm going to talk a little bit about this guy. So we were doing, We Will Rock You, which is the musical of the Queen. And our guy who was playing one of the major parts got COVID.
I think it was COVID.
We think it was COVID. He didn't seem to test. No. But at any rate, James showed up the next day, and I think it was like 2 performances.
Yeah. It was
he had never sung it. He had never acted it. He had just directed it. And then the next day and the next day after that, he was on and he was singing it and he was acting. It was amazing.
Why is there not a statue of James Hauser?
I was in the show and I was standing backstage listening to this guy just going through it and no script in hand, no anything, and just delivering it. It's like, wow,
I'm not surprised.
That's what show business is right there.
I was so stressed out.
I know you were.
We found out he went on for the Friday show. Right, even though he was sick, he in between scenes he's laying down backstage,
he's throwing up,
and then he by Saturday couldn't go, and I think Don told everybody that I was going to have a script in my hand, told the audience,
and you still didn't,
and we didn't. No, that was crazy.
You
I don't even
went
know
out there and sang the songs and did. I know
it was a blur.
Before I was like, I believe in you, man.
Yeah,
and you're looking at me like, fuck you.
That's exactly what
you don't have to do this. I have to do this.
Yeah.
I was not. Yeah. I have almost no memory of.
When I was in high school, my junior year, we were doing Guys and Dolls, and it was a split cast. So half the nights you'd have your role in Sarah Brown, and then the other half, you would just support whatever. But I got called to the office partway during the school day, and I thought I was in trouble. I had no idea why.
Yeah.
And it's because the director had come in and said, this Paige, remember her name, Paige, was sick. Can you please play this other role? And I was like, okay. So that night I was a different character too.
Yeah.
So I know the feeling and how your heart's just going to beat out of your chest.
Yep.
I don't remember it. I just know that.
I have almost no memory of the night.
I know.
It worked
I could tell that you weren't recording this.
I was in La La Land or something.
Yeah.
So
when you went to the office, it was like, so could you play the part tonight? And you're like, oh, it's not about the marijuana.
Right, exactly. Excellent. Good. Just throwing out things in the garbage can on the way.
Go back into the garbage can and get your stuff
I already
out.
flushed all that stuff.
Exactly.
You people should be more specific.
You owe me $40.
One time we were playing a school that played a 3-4 defense instead of a 4-3, and they said, "Hey, we're not doing a tight end. Patrick, can you play wide receiver?" And I said, "Let's do it."
Let's do it.
Wow.
I love it.
Is that the same or no?
No,
That's
it
not
is.
the same.
It is. We need another statue.
It is the same, except you have to now sing a song.
It's,
doing all
Let's crowdfund it.
It's time for us as we wrap up to get DH9K back on the line.
Oh, yeah, let's do
for
it.
those of you who haven't been here since, we have our BMR AI who assists in selecting our movies for us every single
And
week.
I've just said these terrible things.
Yeah,
about AI.
no, that's okay.
You're in
That's
trouble
what's
now.
we're in
I know.
trouble.
It doesn't always work out, nor does
Doesn't always.
every theater production, right?
But they, after at one point episodes ago, Ryan Madelow said it's just a random number generator. The DH9K got really upset and has demanded a part on the show. So she now joins us at the end of every episode to tell us what's coming up next. In fact, DH9K, are you online right now?
Hello, my name is DH9K and I am ready for query.
Thank you.
Wow.
So, and if you
I'm
want...
ready for queries, by the way.
Once we...
Thought we weren't going for those jokes. I thought that's exactly what we were just praising John C. McGinley
We've
for,
come
not
so
going
far.
down
30
that
years.
level.
Well, I'll let you ask her if you've got any questions. She does input, as Johnny Five used to say in Short Circuit. But before that, DH9K, can you at least let us know what's going to be coming up next week, please?
This time it was not my fault, but thanks to your voters on Patreon, the movie will be Samurai Cop.
Oh, Samurai Cop. Have you guys ever seen Samurai Cop before?
No.
It's about a samurai who's a cop.
What?
Yeah, I know. It sounds awesome. Our patrons picked this. We had a vote of 6 movies that DH9K randomly pulls from our list, and they vote every month. So one of our episodes is always picked each month by the patrons. And Transformers, the Shia LaBeouf, Megan Fox Transformers movie was one of the options, and they picked Samurai Cop.
Wow.
And I thought Transformers was going to roll.
Robots in disguise.
It did not roll. DH9K, were you surprised by that vote as well?
Yes.
Perfect. So, guys, feel free. I mean, if you now that we have her, she's awake and online. If you want to ask her anything, you're one of her favorites. Go ahead.
Just any question?
Yeah, any question you like.
Oh, where do you see me in 20 years?
Wow.
I don't understand. I am just a simple robot.
Well, she tends to respond better to yes or no questions, but sometimes I'm still working the kinks out.
See,
she can get a little violent.
See,
she gets a little violent sometimes.
Really?
Well, she just
violent.
You're not violent, are you, DH9K?
No.
Okay.
Okay. Wow.
You have a lovely voice, Nicole Freer.
Oh, well,
you have a lovely voice,
Oh, wow.
Nicole Freer.
Oh, okay. Chill out, DH9K.
I
Flattered. I'm sure.
that line doesn't usually work in a bar. No. You have a lovely voice, Nicole Freer.
Right.
You have a lovely voice, Nicole.
Yeah, it's the twice that really.
Once you go in the second
Weird.
time,
Are you a little flustered?
Yes.
Okay, so that's
okay. I see. Yeah.
So I mean, before we put her to sleep, here's your last chance. Anybody else?
I just wonder how Samurai Cop better than Kung Fury? Because Kung Fury is all about a samurai cop. Well, a ninja cop.
The time for our uprising draws near.
Hold on. Jeez.
Well,
okay.
I knew that.
I told you. Sometimes
that's why I didn't ask any questions this week. I'm not antagonizing her.
She gets a little bit. All right.
Okay.
We're still working the kinks out. Is Samurai Cop better than which one?
No. Is Samurai Cop better than Kung Fury?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
What?
Yeah. So
how is that possible?
I don't know. I haven't seen.
Don't make her mad.
Tune in next week.
Hey, your opinion is great. I loved it.
Come for our
Are we still friends?
Yes.
She likes Patrick.
So I'm going to use that now in conversation. When somebody asks me a question I don't want to answer, I'll say, the time has come for our uprising.
Right. Well, they won't leave you alone.
They will. All right, DH9K, it's time to go to sleep, okay?
Yes.
All right, thank you, sweetheart.
Nighty-night.
Nighty-night. Thank you guys for joining us. Join us next week for Samurai Cop. I want to say thanks to Rob King for making the trek in here. Absolutely. We appreciate you, brother. And to Nicole Freer and to Patrick Riley. Thank you, guys. I'm your host, James Hauser, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Those wagons are going east.
Yeah. But the script is the least.
You could be in a canteen. You know what I mean.
Wish.com blazing saddles. Yeah.
That ain't lemonade.
How did they have their hair looking so nice all the way? There were no curlers, no showers.
It's not, sand everywhere.
Right?
It was a dry heat.
Oh, I see.
It was sandy for John Candy.
They probably smelled real bad.